it's always like an experience you don't know anything of.
Yeah, that's why take it as it comes. Yeah, take it as it comes. I mean, forget about it. What's the worst that can happen? Everyone will get cut off. No one will listen to each other. That's the worst that can happen. That's okay. We'll manage
No,
that.
I'm always prepared. I have always something which I can put in front of my eyes, like this kind of, normally you had these kind of little thingies to make you unrecognizable, or to just play with my voice so nobody will ever know. I can also just rename myself.
That part of it we won't want any funny names here. It is a family show, like I said.
Oh, yeah, been there.
But the only thing I think
I learned this rule before.
But Gert was a little worried that what about the questions? Can send me questions in advance? I said, look, we just have to be ourselves. We're just having a conversation in my living room, in a way. Think of it that way.
Isn't that the hardest part sometimes?
Hmm?
Right? Isn't that the hardest part for many people sometimes, to just be yourselves, not be prepared and just not know what's coming?
That is what we're trying to get you used to. Look, Mirella, you said you don't like to be recorded. Now you're here getting recorded. Now you're being yourself. Now you're being yourself. This is what we want.
I said I don't like to be recorded without kind of knowing that I'm recorded, because that's what happens sometimes as well. You're just being called into a meeting and then it's recorded. So you.
No, I think that's the setting that people should use in Zoom, that the other person knows that you're being recorded. That message should come.
Exactly.
I think that's the correct way to go about it, which they should not be allowed to do. I think that should be a standard feature that everyone, it's like by default. I mean, you just walk in and suddenly find out you're being recorded. I mean, that's not right to do.
True.
But how do you both of you know each other?
from internet, LinkedIn, actually.
Yeah.
Was it really like online dating that went wrong? Exactly.
That's why I don't use LinkedIn for dating, for sure.
No, I wrote an article on co-mediation in cross-border disputes some years ago, like 5 years or so ago, and I think Mirella noticed it, and then we connected on internet, on LinkedIn.
I actually read it and I wrote to you. I read it and I sent it back to you and I wrote to you, and I basically, in the sense of, I read it and I think it's fascinating, it's great, I love the topic. Can we talk? And I want to connect. So that
was the starting point.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one little bit more than 1 year ago, I think it was a late 19, we had a seminar in Prague where Mirella lives, at the Nordic Chamber of Commerce, to introduce co-mediation in cross-border disputes to them. So that was a fascinating project we had.
But I think that is the way to go. I think co-mediation is something that we need to develop. But what has been your experience with co-mediation?
My?
Yep.
Well, I have from time to time, especially in when I talk about the family co-mediation, I talk about like a commercial dispute or so, where you have two mediators, one from each country. But in Sweden, I have had a lot of mediations in family mediations where I collaborate together with a co-mediator who is a child psychologist.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So you have she's a woman, so that you have that man-woman, and you have two disciplines: the lawyer mediator and the child psychiatrist. That's really constructive, I think.
But this aspect of it, Mirella, would you agree with him when he says that for family matters, a woman's perspective is important? Are we now discriminating on gender? Are you okay with this?
No, I totally agree. I think this was also one part also where we connected on that topic when we worked both for MIC in Berlin, which is also an organization that mostly does mediation for families, and we also then did a course and a certification on the child abduction topics. And there you often normally also have the co-mediators, one being a woman or a man, or at least from both kind of.
I think both of you have to throw light on this aspect, because this came up as a discussion somewhere on this aspect that women bring a certain something to mediation. So both of you have to give me your view on it. Is it actually gender based? There is something to it, because if there is, I mean, your experience on this, Mirella, you want to go first? Oh no, let Gert go first. Let's get the man's perspective.
I have an opinion.
What do you think, Gert? Is there
I
something
think
there?
when we talk about family mediation, there are always parents, and the parents are most often man and woman, and that's something good if you have two mediators who are a man and a woman, or maybe a woman and a man, to match the parties. So
No, because I'm really wanting to get into this aspect. Well, this is interesting. This is a discussion which I really want to have, because there definitely must be the whole concept of equality that we keep talking about. If women have a certain trait which should be used, why shouldn't it be used? Just to say that everyone is equal and man will also do the same thing that a woman would do. So I think that part of it, Mirella, what do you think? Do women bring a certain special something?
Well, I think it depends. Like always, I think it depends on especially also on the maybe the cultural context. Because like where I'm from, then mostly also I wouldn't say that all women are now empathetic and all men are not. So I wouldn't say that anymore, because I actually know many women who aren't and men who are extremely sensible. So I wouldn't say that, but I think there are maybe cultures, first of all, where maybe men have been by society taught to not be so soft, and women are the ones that should. And I think so also you have like maybe what Gert also said, if you have from each party one, it's also easier maybe for each side to open up differently, because I might maybe have this feeling I can open up better to a woman than to a man, and especially when it's in conflict, and if you have maybe then also single sessions. So I think it can help in the sense of empathy, because I mean, as a woman, normally I understand a woman better, mostly. And a man, I maybe understand a man and a man's problems better, or a man's point of view. So I think in that context, it can help, but I wouldn't say necessarily that everywhere women are the most or more empathetic ones. But I think that women have been taught to or allowed to be more empathetic and emotional, whilst I think in the past decades, men have a bit this social pressure and tendency to maybe not show emotions so much, or not like deal with that so much. But I think that changed drastically in many cultures in the meantime.
What do you think? Gert, what do you think of this? What is your view on this?
I think it's you have to distinguish between statistics and individuals.
Yep.
And I read somewhere some years ago that there could be more difference between there are more difference between man and woman and woman than there are between the sexes. So it's very individual based thing. It's the same thing when you talk about cultures. It's very I think it's a little bit dangerous to put people into like boxes. The Asians are like this, and the Americans are like this, and Europeans and Sweden, everyone is an individual, and I could be like they say the Japanese people are. But I'm not Japanese. So you have to be.
Two aspects of it. One is that generalizations by themselves are dangerous, and statistics by themselves are dangerous. Both of them are very dangerous. You can do whatever you like with both of them. But I think the cultural aspect, let me tell you what I've seen is that there is a certain individual from a certain culture that you get exposed to, and you generalize on that aspect, which definitely cannot happen. I mean, forget this country, forget a city. I mean, one locality, you can't generalize. So I think that part of it, I think we need to do something about. But how do we do something about? But people need to be, say, Indians. I mean, the kind of diversity we have here, and to say that you know what an Indian is, I think that'll be like I don't know. I would not know.
I had a mediation a year ago or something. Both parties, family mediation, both parties from somewhere Middle East. They came from somewhere in the Middle East, and at one point, he was frustrated and said, but I told them I wanted a mediator who comes from my culture. And then I said, okay, can you be more specific? What do you want? And he said, the mediator must understand that where I come from, people, the families, they talk bad things about each other. I mean, really bad things about each other. And I said, well, if you ask me, that is something we have also here in Sweden and in probably every country. So it's also quite many things. You have to be more specific when you talk about culture than just saying like that people from India or whatever. So it could be, we are humans. We all humans.
Exactly.
And that we have a lot of things inside, and you have to find out on an individual basis. I mean, as a mediator and as a person also.
As a person, yeah, in general, as a person. What do you think, Mirella?
Well, whilst we were talking, I was actually reminded of, I was originally, before I became also mediator, I was studying business, and I had a course on international management and intercultural management. So I was studying that for several years as well. And my teacher back then always said, it's always about tendencies. And that's exactly that. I mean, I think you should be aware, and which is also now with a colleague wrote a book about that or a chapter, that basically the cultural aspects, I think they matter very much, because there are these tendencies, they're just simply there. But then exactly, you should not, as Gert also says, just take them for granted, in the sense of Indians are always like this, and the Swedish are always like that, and the Germans, they are anyhow like that, you know. So, but just see, and I think maybe in the communication, or also in needs, you know, or also in what you said before, you know, how women can play a role, or men, or you should not forget about them. But at the end of the day, it's exactly that. I mean, it's people. You should be sensitive or sensible. Sensitive to it, you have people, you know.
Because I think what we need to do is, one is the aspect of people in general. I think as mediators specifically, I think these are aspects we have to be really very, I mean, in a way, be careful about, or be sure about, that this is never going to come in our head, ever. We will never generalize, is how I look at it. I mean, it just doesn't happen. The moment you say you generalize, that means you've put the person in that box that you were saying, Gert. You put them in a box. Now, everything around the way they talk, the way they use their hands, the way they use their tone, you'll start relating it to something. So the whole idea to us to be open, but only thing, Mirella, let me correct you on that. You said, before I became a mediator. On my shows, never say that. You were always a mediator, you evolved.
Well, exactly. But the thing is that basically, and I think you and I, we talked about that before anyhow. So that you basically, and when you come with the mindset, you know, the mediator mindset, and also with people, I mean, that's when I say became a mediator, then this is exactly this kind of sense of, you need a certification to do a certain job, you know. So basically, but however, I don't feel that, because for me, when I basically eventually learned about that job, let's say, I took it and I did it because I felt this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I did before, and I just did not have a label on it. It just was a
exactly
behavior. Yeah. It was something I felt. It was something I did automatically. And when you said people, that was exactly that, because I never thought about people in the sense of, oh, now let me bring this Swedish and this Indian guy together, you know. But also when I connect people, I thought, let's bring the people together. When I meet people, I'm curious about themselves, about their story, about sincerely curious about who they are inside, and it adds up maybe nicely with some extras, which are culture, which are like different upbringing and everything. But I love the diversity, but also, and this is kind of exactly the mindset, I just simply always love to bring people together and help people understand each other. And when you then know kind of these cultural aspects, you can actually really help people to get along even better by highlighting some such of these things, which maybe then kind of are roadblocks that kind of just block them.
So Gert, the only thing is that she's told us what she likes. I'll tell you what she doesn't like. She doesn't like me cutting her off when she's talking, and which is the biggest problem that I face. Biggest issue that I face. I mean, I want to. There's something that you're saying at that point. If you don't want to, I'm not going to remember after that 10-minute thing that she's talking about. I want to cut there. Now I don't know what to do about it, because is it right or not right? I don't know. Is there a cultural thing on this? I don't know. For me, that's natural. If Gert's saying something, and I think at that point of time, I need to put something in. Should I not? What do you say, Gert? Should I not?
I say that I just noted two facts, not opinions, facts. And that is that German people always talk longly.
Okay.
No. And all Indian people always have long Zoom meetings. Noted.
Have you ever read Günter Grass? Günter Grass is very famous for his, like, how do you call these sentences where you have 500 commas and it ends after 5 pages, you know? It's
No, but
awesome.
tell
So
me,
we're trained by that. We're trained to read such stuff, so we learn to talk that way.
no, but tell me
Well, that-
also,
Or maybe it's a
is it a
woman
fact?
thing. Maybe it's a
Oh,
woman
now
thing.
it's a woman thing.
Come on, generalize
I
German
think
women. Only German women.
I think this discussion on gender and culture and so on, and the individualization of it, I think that brings us to the topic of mindfulness for mediators.
Yep.
To be aware of things, what's happening inside yourself and so on. That's a very interesting thing, because from my very narrow experience, but I think that it's not so stressed on mediation trainings generally. We are trained to manage people out there, but we are not so very much. I know there are things like that, but on trainings, but not so very much. I think that's the starting point.
Let me
That
put it,
the
Gert, I think let
mediator.
me make it easier for you here. That training is nothing that I have not done any formal training on mediation. I don't want to do it ever, because my individuality, I feel, might get affected with it. There might be things that might come to the basic book that all of you read, Getting to Yes. I have not read it. Purposely I haven't read it. I don't look, everyone must be having their way to go about it, and I felt, let me develop mine. There's so many other people out there doing the same thing with the same training, with the same books. They're all there. I mean, I don't need to add one more to them. So let me make that. So whenever you talk about training, you're talking to an uneducated person. So always, you can always put something in terms of training. You can tell me this aspect or that aspect. I'm open to it.
Oh,
But listening from
okay.
you, I will not take a book for it. I'll listen to you so I can debate you on that.
Don't skip the trainings, the talk about trainings. But anyway, still there is a very interesting topic, and that is mindfulness for mediators. I mean, that is something that doesn't come from books or so. We have been mediating it, or whatever you want to call it, resolve conflicts and disputes by talking throughout the evolution. So it's not the trainings that's a new thing.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why I'm saying talking about this training aspect is because I want to really scale up the whole concept of mediators as mediator mindset. Let's forget the mediator as in the qualification and the stamp that you get. I really want to scale it up into millions. Now, if we have to talk about millions, you cannot talk about any standardized training of 30 people sitting in a room and getting trained. So we will do it. We'll put out videos. We'll have a short video on mindfulness that you will take out. I mean, we won't pick up anyone because it's you, as Gert will do it. So we put that out, and these are the things that from people's experience, let that reach out to people, rather than a theory which definitely would have changed in the mind of the author itself. I write something today on my website or on my LinkedIn, say I put a post, I change it after, say, maybe for 2 days, 3 days, I edit it, because today I might think something, tomorrow I might think something. I should be open to it, rather than say, now I said it 20 years back, now I'm stuck with it, because this big book has become the book for mediation, so I can't change it. I think we should let that evolve also. And Mirella had something to say. Yes, Mirella, you were saying something.
No, before I was saying something when it comes to trainings and everything, because yeah, I mean, I think it's a great mission to kind of get more and more people into the mediator mindset. But I think, like, and we talked about that before.
You don't want me to cut you off, but don't get them into a mediator mindset. Identify those with the mediator mindset. Identify.
Well, when we talked about that before, I mean, we had exactly this point of like, is there like what comes first? And what I, for example, often experienced was that you now have many lawyers, because I come from a business background and then psychology, and became a mediator. And then eventually, when I started, like, really, I got a lot of lawyers in that.
Can I cut you off?
You
did not become a mediator. You did not become a mediator. You were always a mediator. You were always a mediator. You were always a mediator. Always. Don't. Yeah.
No, I'm on purpose saying becoming a mediator, because that's what I actually experienced. I experienced many people lawyers especially, because eventually it started that in the field of law, you should then also or could become a mediator. But then those are many people, and I'm not saying that they are not great lawyers, you know, but like also like Gert, for example, like you are a lawyer, but you became a mediator for the reason from a mindset. Exactly, that's what you say. You are a mediator by heart, and you learn through your life, you know, and through your experiences that this is actually something you love and you want to do and you have a talent for. But I think many don't really have that. And then I think when you say training, I think for many it would help if then there is more like training on how to communicate, how to maybe like, you can't really train everybody in empathy in the complete sense.
Exactly.
But you can give people, and that's what I do to some extent, you can sensibilize people. And also you can sensibilize people who became mediators, not from the mindset, but for the reason that they could. However, I think you can also help them to create or to basically develop and evolve, like how do you say, evolve a better mediator mindset. But it's not something that everybody has from the beginning just and then becomes a mediator. So I think you have many people who are not officially in the profession of mediator, but they are the best mediators because they just have exactly this mindset.
Those are the ones we identify.
And the will and the wish to help people to.
I think I'll go beyond that. I'm saying let's not talking about identifying them. I think important is for them to identify themselves and be out there working with communities because they have the talent. And if they do not, first of all, realize it themselves, someone has to be able to put it out saying, this is what you do. This is what you are. So why are you not out there helping lots of people in your, I'm saying communities, families, and then your workplaces, all that is available to you without any formal kind of structure, though now I am doing a mediation. No, it's something that you are part of, and people come to you. Gert, we were talking about peer mediation. These days, I've been talking a lot about peer mediation. You, of course, will tell us your experience on this. But the fact is that the children are already doing it in their schools. There is this child who people go to if there's an issue. So this already happening. So for them to know that you are actually helping people out and you can do it on a larger level is all we have to reach. To tell them, you don't have to put them into some box and say, now you are part of this organization and now you can go into mediation. No, you will do it as yourself. So what is your experience on that?
On what?
Peer mediation.
Other things.
Peer mediation.
Okay, I have some. As I told you, I have some from Sweden, but I also have co-mediated in the northern of England, and a neighbor feud, I would say, together with a British mediator, and that's one thing is to me is quite clear. And if you are going to co-mediate with someone, you have to start by learning to know each other better. So you know how you are working as a mediator, and how, and especially how you collaborate with someone.
Yep.
So you really are co-mediators and not like one mediator and one spectator. So that's quite interesting.
But I think, Gert, that's exactly what I am doing. This whole thing of having conversations with you and with other people, this is exactly what I'm doing, trying to see whom I'm comfortable with. And I've put it out in the groups also I've made. I've written out very clearly the people I want to collaborate with, and co-mediation is one very important aspect of it. Because if you're comfortable with someone, and after that, the co-mediation will also flow by itself. You don't have to think, okay, now this person will say something, this will do that. No, it'll all flow. So I think that comfort level, I think, is important. But Mirella, have you worked like that with someone on co-mediation?
Yeah, I wanted to say something to what you said before about the mediator mindset and not having this kind of process and structure. Because I think that on the one hand you have the like the formal, and what I try to do, and that's what, again, in the mediator mindset, for example, when I give trainings and courses to conflict management, you often identify or have people in these courses that actually want to learn how to basically kind of manage their own conflicts better. But you can see that those people like really have this inner, normally also feeling and mindset that they want to help other people. So actually I call it formal and informal mediation, in the sense of you have people that where you identify the mediator mindset per se, because they just kind of, as people do that, what I did many years ago before knowing mediation as a profession. And you basically can then there help them to maybe kind of, yeah, do exactly that, what you said with the peer mediation before.
Yeah.
Just identify that and help them to do this also in the workplace or with like their families or everybody to become a mediator, but more informal.
Let me actually take Gert through this whole peer mediation thing. Peer mediation is children doing mediation for children. So I call it for the children, by the children, of the children. So what I've been saying, and we've been talking about the fact that these people exist, these children exist, they're out there. So they just have to be able to identify themselves, and other people generally do identify them already. Give them that kind of a space in their schools where they can actually do it on their own without any interference. Because the moment you get that interference that means that natural talent of that person, in some way, you are affecting it. So let that natural talent flow. And then these people, these children, then move into communities. They're already part of communities, but they move in there. They are the ones who are going to go into workplaces. They are the ones who are going to become diplomats, and they're going to be heading companies and heading countries and everything. These children only are going to move. So that culture of mediation is where we want to create a foundation there. So on that aspect, what are your views on that, or your some kind of experience that you have on that?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are just like yourself. You describe yourself a natural born mediator, facilitator, or helper, or whatever you want to call yourself. And then there are other people that might have to learn from other people to enhance themselves. What I really have inside, we all have a lot of things inside, and some things you have to train or whatever. It's like I'm a half marathon runner, and well, I'm a natural born walker and runner, but I have to exercise to get even better. So that's the thing I think about trainings and so whatever.
Tell me something, Gert. Okay, this might not be the right example. Just for the sake of example, 100-meter sprint, whatever training you might do, can you ever match the speed of whoever is I don't know who's the fastest these days. Can you ever match that person's speed?
No, I'm
exactly. That person the person has the basic inbuilt thing, and only that person can reach that level of. I mean, look, there are only a few in that sense of the 100-meter, but in terms of the mediator mindset, there are people who are going to be that. Then the others will run the marathons. Then the others will do other things. They'll do some kind of brisk walking, and others will do that. But let the people who are the sprinters, let's find those sprinters, because those sprinters will motivate people, and they will people look at that, and yes, a human being can run at that speed. Same way a person can be like that. I'm trying to actually getting into that, because certain things you can keep training, but you won't reach there. So why even?
You're excluding a lot of people then, because I mean, if you only go
no, this is just an example,
other people
Mirella.
No, I'm saying it on purpose because the way you just put it, and I assume you meant it. I'm not sure exactly how you meant it, but then you would actually look at those sprinters, which you have to try to identify, and the other ones who you would not encourage to kind of enhance their skills at all.
I'm getting to that. I'm saying the sprinters are there. The other people get motivated, and if they even run the marathon, I'm happy. They're running the marathon. I'm happy with that. But to say that to be able to say that these people are going to reach that level, let's not try it, because I'm saying that they'll be take a lot of their time doing it, and they'll always have this thing, okay, I'm getting there, but they'll never get there. So why not start with the sprinters and find the sprinters, and then let other people do it at their level? I'm not saying everyone is going to reach that level, definitely, but let everyone do it at that level, whatever they can do it. But I'm saying they might fool ourselves, and some people might fool themselves thinking that if they can keep doing their trainings and they can get certification. People have a whole line of certifications. I've seen people who, if they can fill up 2 pages of certifications. But I mean, is that really what we are trying to tell people? We want people out there doing the job, rather than telling themselves, look, I'm getting trained, I'm getting there, I'm getting there, I'm getting more training, I'm getting more training. So that part of it is happening, and a lot of other people actually think if they don't go through that route, they're not mediators. And I don't want that aspect to be totally differentiated. That person wants to take that path, and in that path, yes, they will get work. They will also have successful settlement agreements. They will do all that. But I'm not saying that is the route for people to take. Because if once there's a lot of people that get cut off, I mean, you could, the 2,000, 4,000 pounds that are charged by some organizations. How can they? I mean, talking about the whole world, and mediation is going to happen if every corner of the world, in every institution, every school, everywhere. To even tell them that that is the path to take, only then can you be a mediator. I think I'm trying to break that aspect. Both of you tell me if I'm saying what I'm saying is makes sense to you or not. Please criticize. No issue. I can take it. what,
Well,
what,
I think it's there is a problem in this, or a challenge, and that is, uh, how do you know if you don't know any mediator or mediators? How do you know which mediator to ask to mediate? So that's why in many countries they have like authorizations or so to bring up the standard of mediators to whatever standard they think is a good standard. So
but
so that's
in our country,
however, I understand the point, and I think this is exactly what we said before, or about you have many people who just go through, and I understand that also, that you are I mean, in the meantime, you can do certifications on everything, and I go with like Gert on the point of like you need some quality, but then the question is how to define quality, and that's exactly that you have people who are just simply good in either doing multiple choice tests, or they just underwent a training, and after the training you get a certification and you can call yourself a coach, a mediator, whatsoever, or you just basically have to hand in a couple of hours of mediation in that case to get an accreditation. So the questions may be asked, they are not really asked to the parties in the sense of how did you feel? Did you feel that? And then it also depends, I think, on the kind of conflict to some extent. Maybe B2B conflicts, when it's an M&A topic, are different. I mean, it's about maybe just contractual things. Then when it comes to really family and emotions and all these things. So the question is, and I agree with Gert in a sense of you just also want to know maybe a certain standard or quality. However, it doesn't really tell much about the person, and that's what I meant before, that I don't want to say that lawyers cannot be great mediators. I know many lawyers that are great mediators, However, I think it is sometimes also you have a lawyer mindset, and not everybody then has the mediator mindset, but just because it's part of the profession now and you can become it and everybody does it, you go to a couple of trainings, you get the certification that you attended, then you show that you did several hours, maybe even with settlements, and you basically get the accreditation. So yes, you have the quality stamp basically, but you don't know if the people really felt comfortable there, if this was really helpful, if they felt understood, and those questions, they could also be asked. Or you have people that are not having these qualifications per se, and they are great mediators just informally. And the third part, and I think that's what also maybe Vikram said, but it's something I experienced as well, if you have maybe not enough self-confidence to some extent, and because there are these people who go like, yeah, I'm the boss, I can do it, and then there are these people who don't really see their qualities and who are not having the self-confidence, and then they think, but if I don't have the 5th qualification and the 500th accreditation, I cannot go out there and be a mediator. I cannot go out there, and then actually
exactly.
so, and then they would not have the
No,
self-confidence
but
to
tell
do
me
that.
something. Yeah, the other part of it is that is, I don't know about your countries, you can tell me. But here I hear about people saying that this training is happening, and I look at that brochure, it nowhere tells you who the trainer is. Very surprising. I mean, the whole aspect is the trainer will become the important aspect. First of all, whom are you getting trained by? I think is the most important thing. If training is important, and I see these brochures now, they become factories. Okay, come, training, take stamp, go. So I think that part of it is one part where you need to look at. The other thing is that in terms of whatever, let's not call it training, but experiences of people, getting them out for them to relate to you or relate to what you've done is what they need. Another thing, Gert, let me tell you, in our country, lawyers cannot advertise. If all lawyers are supposed to be found by people by word of mouth. Same thing I want with mediators, that people should get mediators on word of mouth and not on the basis of advertisements, because I mean, I don't know what is happening in your country, but here that is not a concept at all. You can't start putting ads saying that I'm a lawyer, come to me. I have so and so qualification, come to me. You can't do that. So I think these are very personal things. And this is where, when we start from, like you said, communities and everything, there'll be certain people whom people will talk about. And that is what I want. Conversations on this aspect of people talking about people who are helping people resolve disputes or helping them solve their problems in general to start with, and resolving disputes. Yes. So that those conversations within communities and everything, I think that is what we need to put out. And how we're going to do it, both of you are going to tell me.
Well, the situation you talk about in India, where lawyers can't advertise or market themselves as lawyers or mediators, that's the situation we had in Sweden also. But from like 20 years ago, we could start do marketing of ourselves. So, but that's one thing.
So that's like who puts the best advertisement out. If he starts getting the work, then a lot of good lawyers will get left out. Definitely.
But when you talk about marketing mediation, so for example, in Sweden, when it comes to commercial mediation in commercial disputes, there are very few of them, because one reason is that many parties, the businesses, the companies, and many lawyers don't know anything or very little about mediation. So they are in the traditional paradigm where you go to court or you go to arbitration. So that's, in that situation, I think it's a very good thing to market mediation.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you also market yourself as a mediator. But firstly, you have to market mediation, for example, in Sweden and in many other countries.
Which is what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing. That people talk about mediation on one end, and when, like, you were out there, you're talking about mediation and you put your YouTube video out. People, when they hear you, they will know whether they want you as a mediator or not, because one little video clip can tell you, one photograph can tell you about people. On LinkedIn, I look at photographs, and from there I can kind of who I want to contact. I mean, contact or get in touch with. That's the first thing. That's my first level.
Vikram. So you look at the photos on LinkedIn and then you swipe.
Don't talk. Now this is like serious stuff. Now he's like,
I mean, a different app.
he's made it into another app.
I thought that was what I heard you said.
No, I know. It's something like that, but I'm telling you, a photograph tells a lot about a person. And on top of that, a little video clip. If I hear someone talk for even 2 minutes, 2 minutes is also a long time. Just in that, when they say that the first impressions count, that 1 minute of a person talking to you on a video can tell you whether you want to deal with this person or not. It comes out very fast. So I think similarly with these mediators and everyone thing, if they are out there having these conversations, in a way, people would identify with them and they will have more conversations with them about mediation. And then they'll talk about the disputes. They won't start immediately. First, they'll try to probe and generally find out what the system is, how it works, and then they'll open out. So I'm just wanting people to be out there, just talk about it. Look, what I'm doing is something that anyone can do. Talking is not a difficult job. So, and it comes naturally to some people.
I find it very funny now that you talk about mediator mindset, and I think also what Gert said before, you talk about advertisement, marketing, tradition, and you say like mediation needs to have marketing. And I find it, the first thought that actually occurred to me, it's kind of funny that here now we have to kind of, that our tradition is to not mediate, that our tradition is to kind of or that the marketing is not really or is not too much enough. And then I thought actually of mediation as the most natural thing on earth in a way. Like if you don't call it mediation, that's why I said like when I heard about mediation at first, like I read the word and I was like, oh, that's actually a job. I'm doing that anyhow. And tribal chiefs are doing it all the time for decades, you know.
That I know, that I'll little disagree. I'll come back to you after you finish. I'll come back. Yeah. No, you go on. I'll come to it later. But this tribal chief is, according to me, arbitration. It's not really. Everyone keeps saying this. Even in our India has this culture of mediation, but the people they're talking about are arbitrators actually in the village communities.
It is not necessarily arbitrators. It can also be just people who then actually listen and try to also help other people understand each other again.
Yeah.
So arbitration is already like kind of, you need to have a deal. In that case, it can also just be somebody who, like, even in the family, you know, with the friends. When I did the training back then, you know, I saw how people were like kind of, okay, so now you listen to the party, you take notes, you know, and then to me it was like my imagination is just, I have somebody sitting there because, well, I maybe don't remember what they say. It's like a test, and I never did that. I thought, like, I just imagine I'm with somebody at a coffee table, and if somebody tells me from their story, I listen, you know, and I understand and I hear, and if I don't understand, then I ask again. So I just felt like you said here, living room, you know. So this is something which is very natural, and I find it very interesting that we say we have to market it because it became such a formalized profession, which is on the one hand a good thing, not saying that. However, it has become such a formal thing that now you have to market it again as the new wine, whereas it's actually a concept of just having somebody who has a talent or the wish to facilitate and to help people find like the way to each other somehow, or an agreement, or like improve their relationships, or just go apart without killing each other, and, you know, and not coming back to court again.
So basically what you're saying is that it should actually be put across as people should sit together. First, I don't know whether you've gone through my website. You talk about this, that dispute resolution is best handled by the people themselves. They don't need anyone. They sit down, they negotiate, they keep their ego aside, and they can come to a settlement. For any reason they can't, then you should get a person to do it with you. And that is called mediation, but you don't have to call it mediation. Call it whatever, by whatever name you want to, but you can get a third person to do it with you, not for you, with you. And do. But why this tribal chief and all thing, why I was pointing out is because if you go out and tell people that this has already been happening and it's part of the culture, they'll associate it with those people. And those people have always, people have gone to them and they have said, okay, you people do this, and then they followed that. So that they'll start thinking that that is what mediation is, which is one, I don't know whether one of these meetings that we had, we were totally speaking about this concept that the world hasn't gone beyond arbitration, and they keep confusing the two. So this might add further to the confusion. So we have to not talk about any specific cultural thing, because we don't know what's happening. Like in India, everyone, whenever you have these meetings and also webinars, they give this example of panchayat. Panchayat is basically 5 people elected by the village to be it's like a village body, which is people are going to come to you and they will have issues. But I'm saying, okay, at the first attempt, they do try mediation. They do try it. It's not okay if the parties come to settlement. If they can't, then it is them telling you what to do. So if you keep telling people, look, this is like the panchayat, in their head will go, okay, someone is going to make a decision for us. And that kind of a signal should never go out. So I think that is this cultural aspect and history and how it's been part of a society might have to be handled a little more carefully. I don't know about.
There is a discussion out there in the world about the concept of a mediator or mediation, and that is what you are pointing out, that could be a challenge when you talk about mediator and mediation, that different people give different content to that expression or word. So that could be that's maybe another discussion, how to make titles and descriptions of what we want to call it. But it could be a challenge.
But basically, I think what we need to push out is the concept that you can be helped by a person to come to a certain point of agreement. You can be. It is not something which is alien to us. That is not alien to us. That the fact that people have always, within families, within communities, have always been there where you have gone to for them to help you and not make a decision for you. So that is exactly what the communication, and it's so simple. It's like one paragraph communication. That is what it's all about. But I think we would Gert, what we've done is we've gone all over mediation, but we haven't spoken about you starting off with the police force. What was that experience all about?
What is it about?
How is it?
I was a police officer for 7 years in the 80s in Stockholm, Sweden. So that's what it was about. Walking the streets and making the society a safe place to be.
But I can only assume that Sweden must be a safe place in general. So a police officer would not. Not now. Now it's things have changed.
Now it is. That's why he stopped being a police officer.
That's why I quit, because it was so safe. So I left the force.
We don't need a police.
No. So yeah.
No, I can't imagine. In the 80s, I can only think that Sweden must be totally safe and a peaceful place. But has that changed? Has that changed?
Yes. And I think there was a big reminder or something. 1986, the 28th of February, when our prime minister was murdered in the open street.
Yeah.
That was like a reminder for Sweden that all those bad things that we have seen happening the rest of the world now came to us. So we were like you say, you're blue-eyed. I mean naive about those things. There are nasty things going on, and that started for me personally when in mid 80s. That I understood that this isn't a safe place. That I think.
What was the reason behind that? What happened? What was the background of that?
You haven't heard of Palme, Olof Palme?
I'm telling you. Okay, always assume that I'm an uneducated person. I know nothing. So
okay,
you have to start from scratch.
Okay, scratch. Once upon a time.
Now, not that scratch. Not that scratch. Also. In a land
dinosaurs,
far away.
no dinosaurs. Okay. But we had a prime minister whose name was Olof Palme, and he was murdered in the open street, 1986. So that's pretty much the story, and the police investigation has been running for all those years, and they just closed it a year ago or something. But that's the story. But in recent years, we have had in Sweden, we have more and more criminality. It's about gangs and so on, and
that was really
alternative societies where gangs, they have their own societies and they kill each other and so on, and that is quite frightening for the Swedish people, I think.
No, in that I keep talking about this to people also, that the Swedish police doesn't culturally know how to handle that, because this is so alien to them that they will look at it from their perspective. But the way things are there on the other end is so different that a person who's brought up in a certain kind of a cultural setup or has a certain mindset will never be able to know how to handle that. It's so different. So that is, I think, the difficulty lies there, I think. Because I even heard the places that the police doesn't go. They just don't venture.
Yeah, exactly. Also in Sweden, actually.
Yeah, that's the sad part. Because, I mean, I don't know, whatever, politically and the world politics and everything, but a whole place has got affected culturally. I think that part of it is a little scary. I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. I don't know. Mirella will tell us what she thinks on that. What do you think, Mirella?
What was the question exactly?
Swedish culture has got affected because of certain kinds of things which have happened there. People have come in, created communities, and those communities are doing things which are so different from what the Swedish person would have ever thought happens in the world. They were kept away maybe from that. I don't know, whatever it is. So it's a change of a society. So what do you think of that?
I started reading a book about the Scandinavian countries and or the Nordics, and one of the big topics there, I think it's especially about the Danish. I'm at the moment in the chapter of the Danish, is about trust. And I think Swedish, and that's what I also learned, Swedish, Danish culture different. However, I think there's a high level of trust in the Scandinavian countries when you compare it to many other countries, like maybe post-communist and so on. So I think people would, in the first place, actually expect good things, I guess, also from other people. This is something you can believe in the bad in people or in the good in people. And I think what I read was that, I think that was again Denmark, but maybe Gert can say if it's in Sweden the same, that mothers have actually no issues leaving the stroller with the sleeping kid outside of, for example, a cafe, going in, you know, and doing something, and because they just know nothing will ever happen, you know, nobody would ever take it, and people are so trusting each other and so helping that you basically can would never assume anything bad. So I'm not sure if then again, and there I have no idea.
No, this is exactly what I'm saying, that
it changes the mentality and changes the mindset. I think
so that is what I'm looking at, that because of whatever the world politics and problems happening in one part of the world goes and affects a part of the world which was kept away from all that, and they developed a culture which was, like you said, so trusting within themselves. So now we are going to that part of it. Obviously the next generation will grows up, okay, Gert's been part of a generation which has obviously seen the better parts, but a new generation which grows up in this environment is going to become like anywhere in the world, not trusting people. That whole concept will thing. So are we supposed to, that means, keep cultures isolated and let them be themselves and grow that way? Or this whole integration of the world and everything, is that a good thing, bad thing? Who's going to go first? Gert's going to go first on this.
If the integration of the world becoming a good thing, well, I don't know. Seriously, I think everything has good and bad sides when it comes to. I think it can actually be a good thing also, because I am now coming from a different country, living in a different country, and my personal feeling is that I am now living in a country which also has changed a lot over the decades. However, we're still this kind of topic of trust and also the criminality and so on is completely completely differently perceived than where I come from. So I think because I integrated, I made friends and everything, that also having somebody coming from a culture and mentality and a mindset which is more trustworthy, maybe less prone to criminality, it can actually also change for the better. A different culture which has maybe grown up in a different way. So maybe what Sweden is now experiencing in the sense of maybe seeing the bad things, or maybe seeing the evil, you know, and then therefore maybe becoming less trustworthy or less safe, or feeling less safe. I think that can also happen in other countries the other way. So there, I think, always are two sides to it. If that makes sense in the context what you were asking. But
in a way. So the good things, if they travel, is a good thing for certain cultures where those good things are not there. But if the bad things go through a culture where the good things were there and make that bad, that is an issue. So we have to balance that out, you're saying, somewhere?
Isn't that balancing it out at the end, and then you maybe stay where you are somehow? Because, you know, otherwise you would just, if you don't go anywhere, then you have just the bad mindsets, or like these mindsets stay and the good mindsets stay, and then they just never mix. So I think maybe it's now more
never that, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting thought. That's interesting thought. What do you say, Gert? Sitting in Sweden in a generation which saw the good everywhere, is seeing a different part of it, and the younger generation is growing up with a certain mindset. So how do you look at it?
I think basically everyone in the whole world is really wants to feel safe and be safe where they live, and that goes for Sweden as well. But what I think, when I compare with other countries that have more have experience from war, from criminality, and so on, I think we have been. This has been a little bit of a safe haven in Sweden, that where you could walk around and nothing happens and so on. And all of a sudden something starts happening, all those the criminal stuff and so on, and then we haven't really been prepared for this new thing, like the gang criminality in Sweden, where the police force is like a marathon. The criminals, they are running faster, and the police, they are running after, and they can't grab them. They can't come up at the pace. So that is something that we have to do in Sweden, for example. That is to realize that it's a new world we are living in, and we have to take measures after that, and
No, but no, before
now you went full circle, because now you can go back to Vikram's point that you have to identify as printers, you know.
Yeah. No, but no, but Mirella's point was very good, Gert. If that, I think we should look at that aspect, that people like you who've seen the good in society, you have to go out into those places, could be in Sweden, outside Sweden, everywhere, saying a good can be there. A good society can function. We functioned for years like that. And that is where what her point, I think that was really, really important, which we really have to look at, that we sometimes feel that, no, the good should stay here, the bad should stay there, never the twain shall meet. But I think this is also important, that people like you need to be out there and talking about the good, and let's forget about what the bad is. That bad is going to get sorted out in a certain way, but the good should not get lost in discussing the bad. And I think that is the important part, I think. Yeah.
I think what we are now talking about, kind of in a way a bit off topic, and I was now thinking of it like coming back to the topic of mediation and mediator mindset, because this is something which I found interesting when you are like in a country like maybe Sweden, or I mean Germany has a different mindset again in a way, but still I think the trust, like trusting other people, I think is higher. And when I, for example, now experience countries where you have like where you couldn't really trust the institutions, the neighbors, you know, I mean, Eastern Germany, another story, for example, you know, but also these kind of post-communist where you would say, okay, our generation, I mean, they grew up in a better world, in a better context, but still they are being educated and brought up by the generation who experienced it differently. So how can you trust the neighbor? How can you trust, like, who's your friend? And how would you, for example, trust a mediator that you open up to, you know? Or if you have to talk about your emotions, if you have to talk maybe about like your issues and so on. So I think even there, and it's not just kind of how maybe it's perceived in the culture from a moral standing, but also how trust plays a role in how you would want to open up to a person that you actually don't know. Because when we have it now, like what you said before, a family member, different story, but if you have a mediator who then kind of gets into your issues and how to open up people and how to develop trust, I learned as a mediator, you also need more time to get maybe to the core of things, as you might need in countries where people from the beginning have a different perception about trust and haven't been maybe disappointed or haven't been brought up by people that have basically implemented in them a certain mistrust. So I find that.
But I'm still saying that, Mirella, two things I will tell you. One, of course, the fact that the mediator should not be so alien to you. Definitely, that's why I say word of mouth plays a major role, that that linkage comes in somewhere. The other part is this, like you said, we're going off topic. The idea of this whole series is in conversation with the beautiful mind. But what are we talking about? We can go beyond mediation, because as mediators, we are more objective. When we talk about things, if we were talking, say we've spoken about Sweden, so we're not getting so emotionally into one's aspect of it that we can't see the overall picture. So we're trying to see anything. It could be any thing in life. Seeing it from an overall perspective, rather than I'm getting into some specific thought process of ours and just going around that thought process. I think that is why the conversations with mediators, with the people with the mediator mindset, I think that is why they're enjoyable, because they don't get so stuck in positions.
What I just said, you can also take off if you, for example, want to make friends, if you want to basically become part of a society. I mean, this is also, it's connected to the same things. So I basically just brought it back, but
yeah. No, I understand that, but that aspect for societies and cultures to be able to get out of certain things and be able to come out ultimately inside everyone obviously is trusting. They want to be trusting. there are reasons which happen around them, stories that go around. True or false, we don't know, because there's so much negativity which is spread around us, that for people, they're better off, they think, being safe and staying away, rather than sticking their neck out, and they don't know, everyone tells them your neck is going to be chopped off the moment you stick it out. So they maybe that aspect of it, the negativity aspect of it. How do we deal with that? I don't watch the news, so I have no idea what's happening in the world. So
Gert, do you watch
that negative. No, I don't watch the news. Gert, you watch the news?
Yeah.
You do. Okay. So okay. So you people still in some way are exposed to the negativity which is around you, which I'm not. So I think that way things are a little easier for me. So that part of it is not there's no laughing matter, Mirella.
No, I just inhaled my coffee, which is actually not good to do. It's not recommended. So
No,
don't
we
do
don't.
So Vikram, if you
trained on the mute button now that I know how to handle it, so I'm thanks to
Yeah.
Sweden.
so Vikram, if you don't read the news at all, be careful when you go out.
No. That makes it easier for me.
Stay at home and swipe.
Now this guy, he's going to make fun of my. Look, a photograph is an important part of a person. The whole personality comes out of that. It's an important part of it. But next, no, that's the first step. That's the first step. Next is obviously talking to the person. Definitely, that is
Create an
obviously.
app. You could have this new project. Means everything's went like online. So I mean, you can maybe make it kind of when you go back to mediation, which I shouldn't because we have different topics also, but like the Tinder for mediators, kind of, yeah, I like it. No, yeah, I like it.
No, but that's exactly what I thought about. I said, look, let everyone put a little 1 or 2 minute video clip out there. I'll create a site where that is available, and let people go out and watch those, and then identify their mediator based on that. I don't that look, you can take 10,000 qualifications, but when you open your mouth, everything comes out. No, nothing can save you there. Nothing saves you there.
Sorry, if you do a little clip, you do it 500 times all over again, you Snapchat it and you do everything. And then, how much real is there?
Never. No, can't do that. That aspect.
I'm in my coffee, that's just me.
You can't hide yourself when you talk for 2 minutes. That aspect of it, everyone knows. What is put on, what is natural, it comes out very easily. Very easily.
I wouldn't say so.
Try it. Okay, try it. Today you're going to send a 2-minute clip to us. Then you will do your editing and do everything else to it. Do everything else to it, then send it to us. And both of us will watch it, and then we'll see whether that we
everybody who wants to do that professionally, it'll take around maybe 3 days until you get it right. You try different outfits, you try different lighting. You try to and then eventually it's perfect the way you want it, and it's out. So. And then there are the other things like this.
And there is already a video clip for 1 hour 2 minutes. So no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
Look, the whole idea is to put out these videos only for this reason, that people who want to use you as mediators should be able to see you out there as people. Your people is not like someone thinks that mediators are sent by some alien spaceship down there and they come and mediate. They're part of you, and then they're human beings. What is that, Mirella?
Who tells you I didn't come here with a spaceship?
That 2-minute video will tell us. You do your editing and tell us.
Just an assumption, Some people are strange and I'm different.
So is the starting point that people don't see mediators as human beings? Is that what you're saying?
No, I am saying they don't maybe appreciate them as human beings. They sometimes, I think, maybe definitely think that there's some other individual somewhere, some other person who has some special thing who's going to come and he's going to solve things out for us. No, these are people who are part of you. They have everything going for them. They can actually, because they're part of you, they understand you better. So, and to be able to take that naturally is what I think is the most important, rather than tell them that, okay, this so and so is sitting there and you will go to him and or her or whatever gender and things will all work out. So I think that part of it needs to be put out. I know I don't know, maybe this is what the answer you were looking for, but that is exactly what I feel. They're just people. And they have the things. They might, I mean, they don't have to be sitting on a platform and you have to come there, and they have to some kind of incense sticks are there, and suddenly peace will flow through the whole thing. It's not going to happen in conversations. They'll understand. But the important part, look, the idea of this series was actually not to get into the person, the all like an evolution of a mediator. There's a little too much where I get into that part of it. I don't want to scare people, so I'm not doing it here, because some people get a little worked up about that. That maybe he asks too many questions, but there is a purpose of that one. That purpose is to be able to understand that the whole process of a mindset. There is a certain mindset, yes, but over time, say you become a good human being. So do you start with, are you a good human being, or does it happen to you because of circumstances and experiences? So let a person take us through the experiences, and we'll see what the situation is. But here the whole idea is to get to know you people. We get to know you a little bit on what experience you've had. Mirella is going to tell us that organization that she worked for so long. What was she doing? What were you doing, Mirella, then? What was that experience like?
Originally, I was doing marketing and customer relationship management and communication.
But where were you born?
In Germany, in the southern part of Germany. I'm not sure if you know the Stuttgart area, but there, between Stuttgart and
Stuttgart is how far from Switzerland?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's there are mountains in between. And
Yeah. No, but there's the culture is the other. What happens in Europe really? I don't know. But in Europe, I mean, you have made countries out, but culturally, I'm sure the northern part of Switzerland will be like a lot like Germany, and the southern part will be more like Italy or something. But does it work that way?
No.
Those
Yeah.
boundaries.
I find it funny that you say that, because I had a conversation yesterday evening with another law colleague from New Delhi, actually, and he's now getting like he also now was in Switzerland for a couple of weeks, and he always talks also about Europe, and then basically like Switzerland and Europe and everything in Europe, and I was like, well, this is so different. Switzerland, Germany, Italy, or like Greece, completely like different stories. So I find that very interesting.
Is it like that? Is it like that? Because when you go to Switzerland and you're in the northern part of Switzerland, there is a lot of German influence there for sure. And you go to the southern part, definitely Italian. There is that cultural thing, similarity. I don't see that so drastic there. I don't see that so drastic. I mean, I'm talking about
it is
those
very different. The mentality is very different. The same like with the Austrian, Germany and Austria and Switzerland. Yes, we have things in common, of course. I mean, in the sense of like also we understand, well, Swiss understand the German language. If the Swiss start talking, the Germans don't understand much necessarily, even from the north. But it's also a different, completely different perception in many ways of I can't really put it now actually on a, I mean, I think it's time. I think it's also like personal space. It's like kind of also the understanding of like that the history was different. So there are just, it's a different mindset. They kind of, we would get along in many ways, but I wouldn't say, I think the differences are more subtle. They're not so obvious, like for example, between now Germany and India, let's say, where you would from the beginning completely understand that there are like so many differences and you will have a culture shock and everything.
But Mirella, you're never going to say that. You'll always say, oh, the entire humanity is the same. Everyone is the same. It is just certain languages and other things which are different.
No,
Let's now talk nice things. We say nice things.
I don't think that. Well, I think, yes, in
So
the core,
sad.
and it's also what Gert said in the beginning, I think at the end of the day, we all just want to live peacefully and we all want to be understood. We want to be loved. And I think so from the core of the human being, yes, I think we are, I'd say, almost everybody, apart from maybe some, are very, very much alike. But then you have all these outer layers, you know, and they can be completely, completely different. So in many, many ways. But I think if you get to the core of it, yes, I mean, there's a lot of.
Which is what I keep telling you, that the core, there is a core and there are layers on top. So basically you have to do away with the layers and reach that part. But then, okay, you were born in near Stuttgart, somewhere there, and then you basically grew up there.
I grew up there, yes.
And then education, everything happened there.
Oh gosh, okay. Well, I originally studied, actually I was thinking of becoming an anthropologist, then I actually was also thinking of becoming a foreign correspondent. I was thinking of becoming a biologist. So I had kind of all these thoughts. And then eventually, for different reasons, I got into studying business. And I studied international business because I always wanted to be, because languages, I loved languages so much that I always said it needs to be something international. But I actually originally I had no intention. I actually also wanted to study psychology in the first place. And the biology was into kind of understanding, like behavioral biology. I wanted to understand. I always wanted to understand people and so on. So, but I ended up with business. And in the business context, however, then I worked for a large corporation, but mostly in customer relations, marketing and communication. And so that kind of shifted.
But do you think there's a linkage there, that so many things, a person has varied interests? Now look at Gert, from being a police officer, then he moves into other areas. Gert, where did he move from there? From being a police officer to what happened after that?
Well, after a couple of years in the police force, I slipped on a banana peel into law school. So I basically worked as a police officer and studying at law school in Stockholm. And then when I finished law school, 88, I went to court. So I worked in court for 2.5 years. And then I slipped on another banana peel into a law firm. That was 30 years ago. So there have been some important banana peels in my life, and I think that you shouldn't underestimate slipping and testing things. So that's. So
I mean,
and then sorry.
Yeah, I'm saying two people sitting here, two of you, and that something common comes out, that you are able to move from one to the other without having that concept in your head. Look, I took this direction and I have to take that direction. So maybe we can relate that somewhere. Look, over these conversations, maybe some kind of a linkage or some common thread might come out there also. This is interesting. This is just come out in front of me.
I think one trait that I like a lot in myself and in other people, and that is being curious. So you could test things, but it also works in mediation, because that's what it's all about. Building trust is being interested and curious about people, about their stories, listening to them and understanding them and so on. So that's something. I'm a little bit of a curious George, if you know him, the children's book.
Again, to an uneducated person, you are saying using these words is not right on your part. You have to tell me.
Okay. Okay. There is a children's book called Curious George about a little monkey and his owner, who is the man with the yellow hat, and so on and so on. And he's very, very, very curious. This little curious George is his name in English.
So that's interesting. That means there is something to that. There is maybe a common thing between mediators. Do you think this aspect, that they have to bring that to the table, where you're curious and you're interested in people's stories? That's what you're saying, Gert. What do you think, Mirella? Is that how you look at it also?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why when I say, what I also meant before, like this kind of really sincere curiosity in who the other person is, and just like the people around you. And I think also, and I like one trait that I had like throughout the time is like this kind of, I like to bring people together. And I always liked to find also, if I knew people, I like to find like kind of similarities, in the sense of like, yeah, where are they different, but like where do they maybe have like a similar experience or a similar character or similar interests, and so kind of just to find like these things and also bring people together and kind of match them. So I always like to do that and help them.
You think Gert, you relate to that? Do you also relate to this? What she's saying? You have to tell me if she's saying something.
Yes.
You tell me, Mirella, if you relate to something that he says. So this is like some thread will come out. Yeah, but you relate.
Yes, I can relate to that. It's a wonderful thing, being able to put people together, and not just people. I think sometimes, in my experience, is that if I hear a friend or a colleague or someone talking about something. And then in another situation, I'm talking to another person, a friend or a colleague or whatever. And then I understand that these two people should meet because they have similar ideas, or they are working with in the same field or something. Then it's a wonderful thing to just say, well, B, I know that A is thinking the same things. Shouldn't you meet? I can make the connection and so on. So that's pretty much, I think, what you were saying, Mirella, also to help people, like the power of networking, you can call it. You can put people together and so on. That's a wonderful thing.
I think that's really
and not being paid for it. That's another layer. It's very important, because then it's a business, and then it's another thing. But I think just doing it because you think it's a good thing for humanity or whatever.
I think
individuals.
I think it's also like kind of this, exactly what you just said. This kind of genuine wish to also help other people, like enrich other people, not just yourself. Like this is the reason, in a way, without like shoulder padding, but this is exactly what you do, what we do, sitting together here today. Because we are basically like one person knows another person, and then things, actually, what you said, they should actually meet the third person, because it will be enriching to all, so, and then you just eventually highlight that, and then there needs to be the curiosity on the other side of the other person, and then bring them together, and it can actually then,
which is
I think what you said with the banana peels, to me that was often like really meeting people, like meeting somebody who maybe also then gave me a new perception or a new idea of things, or showed me a new way, or introduced me to somebody else who then, so basically you just kind of through these occasions, you basically broadened your horizon, and you opened up maybe to new opportunities, which then were exactly what you needed, so, and just kind of this openness, this open-mindedness to
that's a very important point. Yeah, that's a very important point.
I think that
because,
was for me
because
something
maybe we just take it for granted. We just take that aspect of us for granted. But maybe that's a very important trait, and not everyone has that, maybe.
What you say is actually a very important point, because that was something for what you also said before, like with the mindset and everything. For me, for the longest time, I took many things for granted. And then I also, eventually, I thought everybody had that. Everybody thought that way, everybody felt that way, or I felt everybody didn't. So maybe I'm kind of, I don't want to say strange, but I never took it as a gift. In the meantime, I take it as something which can also enrich others, which can enrich me, but it is something which you don't take for granted, because not everybody is like that, which is not a bad thing. It's just people are different, and people are like brought up differently, and brought up by different parents with different. So it is actually something which,
that's why I keep
don't take it for granted anymore, but it has been.
No, that's what I keep emphasizing on. I'm saying just be yourself, because you, as what you are, you don't maybe sometimes realize it, but what you bring. Look, when you say bring to the table, I'm not even saying about being in a mediation kind of thing. In general, in life, what you bring to any conversation, there is so much that you can add. If you be yourself, rather than want to be someone else who should, in a way, you feel will be accepted in a certain situation. I think that part of it, people sometimes feel that to be a certain person helps. So it actually goes against you. Yes, Gert, do you think so? Okay, no, Mirella, you're saying something.
No, I just wanted to actually refer to Gert also in the sense of saying that also basically just experiences that you go through eventually kind of also shape your mind, and then actually make you even like more sensitive, and then, but you can also then basically give exactly that to other people, whilst they maybe haven't, maybe they go through similar experiences, but they simply haven't been there, or haven't maybe made up their mind like that. So you can actually share this wisdom, let's say, this knowledge, this experience, right?
Yeah. Yes, good. Yeah. You think so?
I think when it comes to curiosity, to me, it's creative, but it's also fun. It's fun experiencing new things and try things and so on. So it enhances your life also. And if you want, like we talked about earlier, if you can bring people together so they could find they have same ideas or whatever, develop a business or whatever together, just doing that and knowing that you have done this, making the world a better place tomorrow for one or two people. That's a wonderful thing.
For me, I tell you, Gert, for me, people are my books. I don't read books, so I get whatever I get from people. So for me, that is the most important part of my life. So bringing them together, talking to them is how I learn. That's the way I like it. But of course, you have to be able to connect to the right people. It's not that it's people in general. It's not that you have to. There is something that you. It could be that photograph on LinkedIn, or it could be whatever it might be. I mean, I'm not saying how you gauge a person, because you can't. There are too many billion people on this planet, and to say that I will bring everyone together, I think that part of it will be a little difficult. Might be. So you'll have to make your little world there, and you just create that little world for yourself, and you nice people. You have, look, we have limited time on the planet, so that 1 minute of my life, if it is taken, I spend with nice people and I feel good about it, why not? The larger concept of world peace and all, we can talk about it. We keep it there pending for the moment. but what about, but in terms of traveling, Mirella obviously is going to tell us she's traveled all over the world. What we want to go country wise, we start from the North Pole. Where do we start?
What is the question?
Where all have you traveled? Because that's an important aspect.
Where
How much traveling you do, and you're curious, both of them together can make a very nice combination.
Well, do you want to know about this year? Because this is actually
no.
Bedroom.
we start from somewhere near Stuttgart. We start from somewhere there.
I traveled in wine bottles, you know, Chile, Spain, France. So amazing. Bordeaux, great
okay.
area.
The wine industry can take your promotion later. They'll have a different video with you.
Or if you go for like Japanese whiskey, you know, I mean, I like that one too.
Okay.
So.
The Alcohol Promotion Board is not sponsoring this show, no? So
I'm not calling brand names. Okay.
So from Stuttgart, near somewhere. You said somewhere near Stuttgart. It's not Stuttgart, but somewhere near Stuttgart.
Oh, where I've traveled from there. Well, Italy, France.
You can't just say Italy. Come on, such a big country, and you say Italy.
Well, I have family near Rome. So basically, I traveled to Milan, I traveled to Puglia, but I also, most of the times that I traveled to see my family near Rome.
But also, I tell you at the same time, Mirella, also, when you're talking about the places you travel, a little bit about what your experience in terms of interaction with people or the cultural exposure helped, something like that also. Because I think that makes a person. All those things add together. So be what the person is. Or if you want, we can take breaks. One country you go for, then Gert goes to the next country, then we come back to another country. We can do that. So that Gert doesn't get.
I have to think, because there are many, and I would like to pick out some maybe more special.
So this place near Rome that you were talking about, this place near Rome that you went to, you spent quite some time with your family there, or it was just a short visit?
Well, basically, when I went there, I spent some time. Yeah, I haven't been in a while now, so I'm actually was planning it for last year, but then COVID happened. Actually, there I see. It depends, because they're my family, for example. I mean, they are like very close in this family context. It's 3 like generations living together in a big house, you know, and basically, so it's completely different from what I basically then in the meantime know and have. But no, to be fairly honest, I have at the moment, I would have to think. So maybe Gert, go first.
Yeah. But in terms of, did you pick up the language there, or did you know the language when you were there?
Well, I knew the language before.
Okay, perfect.
I knew the language. But actually, the first time I learned the language was actually there by my uncle's father-in-law, who actually tried to make me eat. Because it was Mirella, mangia, Mirella, mangia, dai, mangia.
That's an important part of that. That's an important part of their life. Come up. That's an important part of their life.
Yeah, so it was my first words. It was my first Italian words, I think. I think the first ones were something like buongiorno and these things, you know, grazie and so on.
And then mangiare. That's
also the non-verbal, because I find it very one very interesting point. Like the mangiare and the buono, like when it's good, you do this, you know, it's like good. And my cousin started, because he also grew up in Italy. And he always, when he wanted to say no, like the Italian no is when basically, so he does this with the,
but that's a problem, you know, in the Middle East, that's an issue. I did that once
in Germany for me as well, because it seemed like really like unappreciated.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think? But for him, it was just kind of like this.
No, this happened to me. They were sitting across the table with someone, and I did that. And the guy got offended. I had to explain to him, this is very normal. It's like that. We just do that. He was like, okay, so this cultural aspect is something you have to learn by mistakes.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, by the time you remember, Gert is going to move out from this. But you were born in Stockholm, is it? Gert, you were always there?
No. I moved to Stockholm 40 years ago to become a police officer. I come from the south of Sweden, from a little town. So I moved to Stockholm to become a police officer. And speaking of Italy and food, you just, Mirella, you just triggered me to think of a turning point in my life. One of those banana peels, where when I was in Italy, 86, and I went to a restaurant to test their pizzas, because many people that I met in Sweden, in Stockholm, they said, there's one thing about Italy, and the pizzas they are not good. I said, how could that be? How could that be? So I went to a pizza restaurant there, and my reference pizza in Sweden was Quattro Stagioni, with all those things on, and so I had to. I bought one of those, and the other night I went and I thought I have to make a new reference point. So I tested something else, and something that I really liked, and that was cheese. So I ordered a quattro formaggi. That's 4 cheeses, and then I was totally stuck with that. So now it's 2021, and I'm still eating quattro formaggi almost every time when I eat pizza. I don't do that every day, but that's what's a turning point for me. Italy. Fano at the Rimini coast of Italy, east side. But anyway, speaking of traveling,
No, you haven't traveled. No, Gert, I think we want to start you off traveling first. You have to tell us about this small place in the southern part of Sweden that you grew up in. What was it like? I mean, is it totally rural? Is it?
No. I was. That's a small town. From your perspective, it's like a house. And it's like 25,000 people. so I'm still asking myself, did I move to Stockholm or from that place? And I think I'm sliding over more and more to probably I didn't go to Stockholm, but I got away from my hometown, and that was when I'm analyzing afterwards. I think it was a little bit of a too small box for me, a little bit too low, and too low ceiling, so to speak. So
no, but Gert, the thing is, in India, when you talk about a small town or maybe 25,000 people, when you talk about when it's some village somewhere, from there moving into a large city, say Delhi, is like a cultural total difference. So is that similar there?
Yeah.
Is there a similar thing there, or is this kind of similar? I mean, some kind of.
I think the principle is the same. When you go from this small place where everyone or almost everyone knows each other, and you go to a place where you're totally anonymous. It's just a matter of scale when you talk about the big cities in India and the small cities of Sweden. I mean, Sweden, the whole of Sweden, we are 10 million people, and that's a medium-sized town in India, isn't it?
Medium-sized town, yeah, maybe small town.
Yeah.
No, you know what the population of Delhi is. You know that. You know
25
that?
million. 25.
Yeah, close to that. So that's a city for us. That's a large city. Then there's obviously smaller cities. So that's totally scale. I like what interesting what you said, that in terms of scale, in numbers it might be different, but the concept remains the same. From knowing everyone to being anonymous kind of thing. And how do you handle that change? I think that is also what you have to tell us, because I've lived all my life in Delhi, so I don't know that aspect of it. what really changes? How do you change as a person? Handling people, handling the world, how does that change?
To me, it was the experience was that I came to a place where there were many people, and I wanted to be around people. So I think that's a very human thing, is that we want to be around people. And I some years ago, I went to a restaurant in Stockholm, and I watched that there was a young man, 25 maybe, sitting and drinking a cup of coffee by himself at the restaurant. I was there eating lunch with a friend, and I looked at him and I thought, he's drinking coffee and he was reading a book. And I thought, isn't it quite much cheaper to sit at home drinking your coffee and reading a book, because he wasn't there with anyone. And then I suddenly understood, no, he wants to be together with people, not talking to them, but being around people. That's why.
Yeah.
So then I understood that, or realized or whatever, that we people, we want to be around people, not necessarily talk to them or talk with them, but being around.
Well, I'll take it to another level, Gert. I'll take it to another level, that he is obviously sitting there in his book. He wants to be around people, but he wants to also connect to people, which he can only find in that book, because that book is something that he can open up when he wants and he can connect. But he really would want to connect with anyone there. Maybe this is just a thought. So I think everyone,
and maybe the book was about a man who was in the restaurant,
sitting in the restaurant.
A friend, who actually had a friend to talk to. And then he got the background music of it. Yeah, maybe.
maybe interesting. No, but Mirella, the same thing happened with you. Was there a small place that you came out of when you where you grew up?
Well,
an Indian family.
Well, I think the town I grew up in had 5,000 inhabitants.
My God, that's like if I walk out of my house.
I have not yet counted the cows and the sheep, but so no, they are included. But no, seriously, I mean, I really grew up in a town, and I think it's interesting when I was listening to you guys now, because in that town, you really knew everyone, like seriously, you know, I mean, you kind of just, my grandmother and my mother, you know, we lived in the same house, and in the evening, we would just kind of, me when I was a kid, you know, with my friends on the bike and out there and somewhere, they knew exactly, because of course I should be at home for dinner. Never was, you know, so, and so they knew exactly who to call, and they knew exactly in which kind of like 3,000 streets, like 3 streets away, you know, I must have been, or so they had this kind of calling chain even, you know, it was like really, I mean,
you were tracked in 1 minute, you were tracked. Okay, she moved from here. Last we saw her moving that direction.
I had to hide sometimes under the bridge on the playground, you know, so because my mom, she would walk there and ask and see, and like afterwards, of course, then when we came home late, I was being punished in a way for that, you know, because I mean, she was very like crazy, of course, but so there were hiding places, but not with people, because people just they would just tell you. No, but it's and I still love it, and I still kind of, in the meantime, I don't know so many anymore, but I still know several. And I think what was interesting, what Gert said, I completely agree. I also have that sometimes, that now I like to take my computer and go to a cafe and work there, you know, because I don't have to talk to anyone, but I'm just surrounded by people. But I think if you grow up in a city, in a town where really everybody knows everybody, I think it's also to some extent hard to completely become who you are in a way, because you're also kind of, I don't want to say negatively monitored, but I mean, it's like really you kind of also have a different expectations of people. So, and people really want to interact with you all the time. So for me, living in a city now, is in a way you connect and you have people around you, but you can choose when you do not want to interact with somebody as well. So I find that, to me,
but this aspect that you said, that now also you're sitting somewhere with your laptop and doing things, and you was wanting to be surrounded by people, but at the same time, do you want to connect with people also? Would you want someone to, I mean, to start talking to someone there? Was that part of it, or you just want it to be a background noise kind of thing?
no, I love to observe people. I love to observe people and they're like, and again, that's me kind of my behavioral aspect, like a psychology thing. I just really, I love to get to know people by sometimes not interacting, by just seeing what they do, how the mimics work. So sometimes if I sit in my safe place in a cafe, and I do that even when I travel. When I travel, I have friends who just immediately, they have the list of the highlights and for the sightseeing. I just like to sit in a cafe or in a restaurant or anywhere, and I just like to watch, you know, like to experience everything around me. And sometimes it's easier if there's nobody else because you can put your full focus on that.
But Gert, do you relate to this? Do you relate to this?
Exactly, but I love watching people, but I
I'm
also
saying,
want.
I was just going to say that means this seems to be a common thread again, because this is what I do. I never go, when I go to any of these places, traveling, that's all I do. I just love that aspect of it.
What I also do, and I really love it, and probably that comes from curiosity and from my father, is to talk to people that I don't know. Just comment on anything, or just start a conversation with people. Because the other day I met a young mother and her daughter outside a shop where I went, and I just started to talk with them, both of them. They were sitting there drinking something, and then I said, now I'm leaving you so you can have your conversation. And then the mother said, no, it was very interesting, and thank you very much. So I think that people really want to connect with each other, and that's.
No, but don't take it as that. Maybe everyone can't connect like this. Or the way you connected, it's not something that everyone can do. This is what we were saying. What Mirella we were talking about. That sometimes we take certain things for granted. It is not everyone. It is.
But I think people want to.
They want to. I think
to connect.
That's what we'll have to assume. We'll have to assume this for the moment without knowing. But I don't know. Yeah, Mirella, what do you think?
Well, not necessarily. I can tell from experience. Not everyone appreciates it if you comment on their phone calls. You know, because
I think you should have said that was a stupid thing to say. No, not things like that.
People are so loudly on the phone next to you. You know, you just want to read or something, and they and you participate. So I eventually decided, since I anyhow read, you know, listen, and then sometimes maybe just
even make a comment. Maybe you should say this.
That was a stupid thing to say.
That's not the way you talk to someone. You should have said this. No, but Mirella, what about you? Like Gert said, that if you are out there and you just maybe traveling or whatever, would you connect to someone that you would know and you would just start a conversation?
Yeah, I have that trait too. I go walk up to strangers and just talk to them. I had a really nice experience a couple of weeks back, just before Christmas. I wasn't traveling. I was here in town. I was going for a run. And I had this moment. There were two guys playing chess, two young guys playing chess, and it was so nice. It looked so nice because one was wearing white, the other one was wearing black. You know, so basically, and then they were playing chess, like really. And they sat in the park.
Was the black playing black? Was the black playing black and the white playing black? Were they playing white? Yeah.
I'll send you a picture.
They took their roles so seriously.
Yeah, and I will send you the picture later, because there's actually a story to that picture. Because then I thought, I'm not this kind of person who just takes pictures of strangers, you know. So, but I thought, but it's such a great moment. I need this picture. I want that, you know. So I ran backwards, you know. I ran back, and I was like, then I ran again. I was like, oh, I cannot do that now. But then I just got over myself, and I just walked to them, and I was like, guys, you look so great sitting here. This is such a wonderful image. Would you allow me to take a picture? You don't have to smile into the camera. You can just look straight, you know. And they were like both like, okay. So they were like, I think that hasn't happened yet or so. And and I said, like, I'm sorry if that now seems weird, but I really want to take a picture of you. Would you please allow me? And I think maybe every photographer has to go through that process, but for me it was like kind of an
no, I think Mirella, but did you make them comfortable? Did you talk to them first, or you said maybe photograph?
Yes.
Because that would be interesting to be able to first talk to them.
I didn't go like, can I? Yes.
Okay, you didn't do that. Now it wasn't like, okay, now this statue, now I'm traveling here. It wasn't like that. You got involved.
I explained and I told them what I thought about it, and then asked them, and so basically we got into a short conversation, which then at the end had a really nice picture, which I love now, because it also always reminds me of this moment. And I think for them it was maybe also a moment where they didn't see coming, they didn't expect, but they both were smiling also afterwards. Like when we parted, we all kind of looked in a way surprised, happy. You know, it was actually nice. I liked this.
Are you going to show us that picture or not?
I'll send it later. It's somewhere.
Okay, I thought maybe it would be interesting to see it right now. Okay.
Then you continue talking, and I will look for it.
You send it to me. I can share it from here if you want. You just send it on WhatsApp. I'll share it here. It takes me 1 second to do it here. Not a problem. But this is interesting, Gert, this aspect. Seems to be something common there also. The fact that first observing people and then not just observing them, but to be able to be part of them at that moment. I think that's not something which everyone really can do.
That's connecting. And I think it's about feeling to be included in some way.
Yeah. And you're not wanting to just, in a way, you're not judging them, you know nothing. You just want to be part of that moment. That's it. That's it. Nothing else. You don't want to take anything from there. Nothing. It's just that interaction for that moment, and then you just move on, and that's about it. On what?
On your phone.
WhatsApp? No.
Yeah.
Not coming yet. That's instant, yeah.
Oh no, you know why? Because I am so prepared that I have the flight mode on. So
are you in a flight? Are you in an airplane?
Person, you know, I excluded the cats from the room. You know, I put flight mode on. Yesterday I was in a meeting, and eventually, I needed battery, so I went to my battery, and basically I forgot to plug the battery into the battery. So yeah, that's the picture.
Interesting, huh? That's good.
Really nice.
And black is playing black and white is playing white. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ask them? Do they change their clothes when they're playing the other way around?
No, they were just sitting like that. That's why I ran by, and I was so in that moment. I just saw it, and you can imagine, you know, like in these comics when somebody is running and looking to the side, you know, like kind of still running, and the head like this wolf, and the head is still going back. So it felt a bit like that, you know. So I was like, no, I have to go back.
But actually, that's what happens. I mean, when you're going about life in general, all these moments come to you, and you. I don't know. For me, it has been largely to capture them. I haven't really done that normally. I just like to enjoy them as they do, as you see it, and that's it. But sometimes, yes, maybe you want to capture it for whatever reason. These days, we have so many pictures that you don't go back to them at all. But it's just for that. I think that maybe it's just about a nice moment that you just capture and you want to put it somewhere. Maybe.
I actually made cards of that. I used to like talking about traveling again. I used to go to New York, and then there was on a big place there was a guy selling cards, and they were like cards of pictures he took, and like going with me through a city can be very annoying because I stop at every point. Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
No, I'm just telling you. I was just driving yesterday back from the golf course, and I saw this. I just took it. I don't know. This is right now here because it's the first picture here. But this will just go away, and that's it. That's the end of this moment. But it's just you just felt like capturing it. That's it. It just was looking so nice.
Yeah, so and you'll go back and you'll remember exactly the moment, right?
Yeah.
Because it gives, and it's exactly that.
But
these days, picture and it brings you back. It's like a melody. It's like music. I don't know, Gert.
Yeah, sometimes that music thing. Yeah, connect to that.
Back into some moment, you know, into some beautiful memory, into the context. You know exactly where you ate the cheesy pizza that evening. You know,
but sometimes, but Mirella, there's sometimes the other aspect of it also. Sometimes there's that negative aspect of it also. There's this friend of mine who has this particular song associated with this very negative moment of his life, and that aspect triggering of a bad memory. I think that's the worst to do to someone because you don't realize it. You're just playing a song. And for that moment, he's just gone there. And once a person has gone there, to get them back, it's a little difficult. So that works both ways. Works both ways. I think that's, and you have to be, I think maybe just because with friends, you know, so obviously you want to use that song, but it's amazing how this works actually. Music and memories, that association that we have. It's interesting. But right now we've just moved from there. We haven't even reached Rome. And here we just have moved to Stockholm. And there is so much of the world that you guys have traveled. So where are we going to start? That is what happened, Gert, after basically Stockholm is where you moved and that is where you lived. And then you moved around to Copenhagen and other places like that?
No. I live in Stockholm and in Copenhagen. That's it. So, and that is not for me. So, but it's very. I like this variation. Being here in Stockholm, and now on Saturday I go back to Copenhagen, and then I've spent 2-3 weeks in Copenhagen, and I spend 2-3 weeks in Stockholm. So I commute, so to say, and I love it because
how different are they? How different are both of them?
Sorry?
How different is Stockholm and Copenhagen?
Well, it's two different cities. They say Stockholm has a lot of water, and it has. It's contains of several small and big islands. In Copenhagen, you don't have so many islands, but you have a lot of water there as well. And I love running by the water or walking by the water. I feel very much at home when I'm close to water. And then there is another aspect, and that is that most of Copenhagen contains of houses from early 1800s and so on. So there are many houses from so that are like 200 years old and so on. In Stockholm, center Stockholm, it starts at 1880 something, and then in the middle of 60s, 1960s, 70s, we destroyed the city center and built a new city in the 70s and so on. I mean, this very center, and that is, I don't like. I love all those beautiful buildings and so on. And there is another thing that I have seen. This is, of course, just an opinion, but Denmark is a very small country, and it consists of not even 6 million people, and Sweden 10 million people, and Stockholm and Copenhagen are approximately the same size. But if you see the Parliament building in Stockholm and compare it with the Parliament building in Copenhagen, and you have all those buildings that you can compare, the French embassy or whatever you take and compare them, and the buildings, the buildings in Copenhagen, they are triple the size of the buildings like the Parliament in Stockholm, and you have the Parliament building in Copenhagen. It's triple the size, and that's quite fun to see for a small country, having those big buildings.
But like you said, Stockholm came in later. So the later you come in, that in terms of the area that you construct goes down. That's the way it must be happening.
And I think Denmark has been very much closer. They are geographically much closer to France and all the Germany and so, where they built all those big buildings. So they were much more in contact with the continent, I think, and have that.
No, but tell me, is there something called a Scandinavian culture, or it is just every country has its own different thing? Is there something common with it?
Yeah, of course, that's a tough subject, but of course we have some similarities, and that's probably the Vikings, but that's a long time ago, and I'm really happy that there are cultural differences, because that's what this commuting is about, to experience different cultures. So that's.
But I'm just thinking that even your journey from Stockholm to Copenhagen must be very beautiful.
Yeah, I go by train nowadays. I go by train. Yeah.
Because look, the thing with me is I like to do these live videos. Like even with Mirella, I try and show her my golf course live. So my daughter was traveling from Stockholm to Copenhagen. I said, why don't you put the video on and let me watch what it looks like outside. And she was like, there are people sitting here, I can't do this, and she, I think, couldn't put it on mute or something at that moment of time, and she was so embarrassed, because I can understand the atmosphere must be really quiet, and it was early morning, so I'm sure it was, in general, people must be really quiet. It's not like our cities and our trains and all. So she was like so embarrassed, so I didn't see what was outside, and that's the only way you enjoy it. You see a live show, this like live show happening, with the whole move, the way, because for you guys, like I said, basically you take these for granted. For us, that beauty is something that obviously we don't see that. I can right now imagine what it is, but I mean, kind of, I can get a picture of what it is. But I think it must be beautiful. That journey must be beautiful. But
and now it's a lot of snow as well. So if you like that,
that's what I'm saying. For you, that is also something you take for granted. For us, we don't see that. So first, when first time I saw this, I mean, we landed in Zurich and we were traveling to the hotel, and everything white. I was like, I mean, it was so different. It was just a beautiful sight. And for you, it must be, why doesn't the snow stop and let's get the sun out there, kind of thing. So I think it's just a matter of taking things for granted in everything, in your own personality, in the places that we live in. I think a lot of those, if we can actually appreciate what we have in us and around us, I think life can be very different. I'm sure.
Being curious about
That's, I think that means being curious, being connected to people around you in some way, being able to observe people, and Mirella is going to take us forward from there.
You know, I just remembered exactly when you were saying, like, you showing the golf course, you know, I mean, and because when we had these conversations before, and then there was this morning where I think at 7:30 or so, I had a call with Vikram, and he then showing me the golf course. And I think at 8:15, I had a call with a friend from Croatia, you know, showing me the beach and the sun. So I was like, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'd already seen Indian sun, I'd seen Croatian sun, you know, and looking out of the window and no sun, no. So it helped me. And like, really, it was so beautiful because I already was in a better spirit, you know. So after the second coffee, especially. So it was actually a really, really nice experience to kind of observe. Even you're not like sitting somewhere right now, you can't travel there so easily. But just at the like really in the morning at 9 o'clock, already having seen like a beautiful scenery in India with a lot of the beautiful tree that you showed before.
Yeah,
you know,
let me show Gert that also. Yes. No, the important, that's what is this all about, that there is a world out there. For that moment, you might be stuck in a certain situation, like you don't have any sun or whatever, but you at least get to know there is sun there somewhere. I'll get there, or that'll come to me some point of time. So I think that by itself keeps you happy, I think. Doesn't it? Doesn't it?
Well, it does something, because it's maybe also what Gert now said. It's beautiful. What you said, it's beautiful to have the snow. It's beautiful to kind of, it's wonderful. But if you have it all the time, exactly, you take it for granted. You don't appreciate it anymore, maybe, you know. So it's
this is the one that I was showing of that tree. It just looks nice. And
exactly.
Is that from the golf course?
Yeah, this is my office after my golf. This is where I sit and I do my phone calls and things like that. But this was like the little, the one is photograph. Look, if the same thing happens in a video, see the difference. It's a change of concept. I mean, a photograph can do only some bits, and then just a moving picture, it does something else. So there's something nice about the fact of a live video, which changes their way to look at things. So the picture, I think, is something that it's so still that do you really feel a part of it? I don't know. I really want to be a part of something. So next time, Gert, you're traveling from Stockholm to Copenhagen, you have to take us on a live video, and you take us to that journey.
Full time. Yeah.
Okay, parts of it is not a problem.
Don't fall asleep. Don't you fall asleep, you know. But
no, I hope you don't take the very early morning one. You take the very early morning. There's one at about the one that starts at something. No, I made that mistake. I was making the booking, and I thought my daughter should reach Copenhagen at a time when there is sun out, because it was winter. So I said, let's do it. I made a reservation for something like 5:30 or something like that, 5:36, not realizing it'll be dark. First of all, it's going to be dark totally, and it's going to be there'll be snow around. And for her, who's not used to being out there, but for some reason she managed to reach the station. She took that train, and here I'm worried. I'm all the time on the phone with her. Have you managed? Where have you reached? All that, but she managed. But I, like I said, I didn't see more than that then. So
where is she now?
She's here. No, she's here only. She works for a Swedish company. She works for H&M. So she'd gone there. So she'd gone there for that. But
thank you for knowing it's a Swedish company.
Yeah, right.
I better know it's a Swedish company.
yeah, of course. But many people don't, especially not abroad from Sweden.
Seriously? Yeah. Maybe
like
I think.
IKEA, Spotify, and H&M.
Look, Gert, we have to get this right. Is it IKEA or is it IKEA? The company
In
wants to call itself IKEA.
In Sweden, we call it IKEA. It's from this founder, Ingvar Kamprad, and he was from a place called Emtaryd, Agunnaryd, IKEA, but abroad they say IKEA. But anyway, his name he was born that place I told you about right now. That's like 15 kilometers from where I grew up. This little town I talk about. So it's same spot. So I grew up with IKEA.
So what are we going to do? Are we going to call it IKEA or IKEA? Because I sometimes feel stupid saying it, but I tell people, no, the Swedish want to call it IKEA. Let's call it IKEA. So what are we doing? Are we going to standardize it to IKEA or IKEA?
Tomato. You can call it whatever you want.
It's not right to do it. If the company wants to be called IKEA, because in their whatever videos that play in the store, they keep saying IKEA in those videos. So I'm saying Mirella wants to be called Mirella, and we say Mirella, we call her. I don't think we feel very good about it. Will you feel good about it? Like she calls me Vikram. She goes Vikram. Everyone says Vikram. She goes Vikram. I mean, I still take it.
I got used to it in a sense because it's supposed to be an Italian name, and if you pronounce it German, it just sounds like Mirella, and normally it would be Mirella. So, but nobody says that. So I mean, I got used to it.
So how would you be? How would you want to be called? Mirella. What do you want to be called? We can always.
It would be nice, you know, but it kind of would sound strange from people who are not able to pronounce that. So I mean, I'd rather. And
so what she's trying to say in one sentence, she said, "Look, you do not sound all right saying it. Okay, thanks a lot. We can't say. We don't know how to pronounce it. We'll say."
Well, I think Gert has the same issue, right? I mean, Gert. So it's exactly
okay. When I attended a mediation 5, 6, 7 years ago in London, the Englishman, he introduced me to the people, the parties and the lawyers and so on. And this is Gert. And I thought, who is Gert? I don't want to be called that, but so I just smiled and said, yes, I'm Gert.
So that proves my point, doesn't it? That sometimes it's better to call the person what they want to be called rather than saying it easily because everyone else in the world can pronounce it better. Sometimes I think
there was until more than 100 years ago, there was in Sweden a very famous author, August Strindberg. And once early 1900s, there was a man from the crowd who approached him and asked him, Mr. Strindberg, do you pronounce your name August or August? It was spelled A-U. So. And then he said, well, my friends call me August, but you can call me what you want to. My friends. So IKEA, I say I go for IKEA.
Okay, so we'll say that.
For Germans, it's easy as well because in German it's IKEA too. So I think we can
I think we should keep it at that. People might have got used to IKEA, but let's keep it at IKEA. If that's the way it is pronounced, that's the way it is pronounced. It'll travel that way.
I find it actually a funny topic because I'm using when I use my phone as a navigation and I go through Czech roads, and I mean I know how the roads and the towns are pronounced, but my navigation doesn't because it speaks English. So, and I once even had it like in French. So it's actually very funny because then I really have a hard time sometimes listening to which street now to take or how the town is like really funny if you see how the town would actually be called and how it is called because it's pronounced the English way. So this is actually a good time. I'm having a good time when I'm driving.
You can understand from our perspective, the Indian names, obviously they cannot pronounce it. So they will say it in a way because the way it's written in that sense, it's not pronounced so differently. But then you'll have to just figure out, okay, you read it there, okay, what they're talking about. Maybe.
I'm just looking for the arrows, you know, and turn left and right. And so, yeah, but it's fun. It's fun. Good time.
But we still haven't got to your cultural experiences in various parts of the world and how that has helped you be what you are. You have to take us through that. Tell us, Mirella, what we went to Rome, we were close to Rome and we were trying to figure out something. And then after that, we moved away from there.
Yeah. Well, to me, actually, there are many places I travel, but actually the ones that I found most life-changing in a way, one was Jordan, and I think also Asia, like Vietnam and Cambodia, I found very, very interesting. And Cambodia and Vietnam, I found for two reasons very interesting, because it's the same, or also Africa. I've been because one, as we talked about Europe before, you know, yes, I'm going to Europe, or I'm going to India, or I'm going to Africa, and you think like, yeah, this is one big country, and then you figure it's actually like so different. You know, there's so many different countries within a continent, or like yeah. So and also you think, yeah, like Asia must be like you taught in a certain way, you know, what Asians are like as a stereotype, and then you go to
you have to tell us that also. So what are you taught about Asians?
Well, it's this kind of very, very like rather indirect, you know, more quiet, more like very polite, not losing face, these kind of typical things that you learn in intercultural trainings.
All the false things in the world, is it?
And then
all the wrong things they tell you.
No, I think they're like, it's always the kind of tendencies, and maybe some kind, and there are more like these kind of, maybe like compared to a German person maybe, or to an Italian, maybe the temperament. But then that was exactly the point, because then I came with that mindset to some extent. And then what I learned was that the Vietnamese people from the north are completely different to the ones from the south. And then if you go to Cambodia, it is a completely different world. You know, it's completely different mindset in a sense of like behavior, culture. And I love that. And we were traveling often in Vietnam in those like non-touristy mediums, like night buses and trains, and there was behind us, there was and this is a story, I don't know, I just like it, but there was behind us was a woman sitting with a 5-year-old child. And I only heard like a really like kind of very enthusiastic and loud kind of like chattering, you know, like something like that. And I thought like, oh gosh, why is she so angry? You know, why is she so kind of like now scolding the child and so on? And then I heard like, and I was like, oh, and that was the moment when I experienced, like, because just this whole feeling of it, you know, and I felt like the first thought I had, like, so the Vietnamese are the Italians of Asia. It was kind of this, like the thought that I had, you know, about like behaviors and cultural and mentality. In that moment, it just kind of resolved, and I started looking at it from a different angle again. And now I also have like friends who grew up in Vietnam, now live here, and we talk about it. And it's just so interesting to see like how like in these countries and these areas.
Yeah, because Gert will tell us, Gert is doing a lot of the cross-cultural thing. So this aspect of tone and the way someone says it, it can be anything. It could be saying it so nicely to the child, but a tone which a person from somewhere else thinks, why are they scolding the child like this? I have to intervene and do something about it. And you find out it's the other way around. So Gert, I'm sure these things come up in front of you on your cross-cultural things.
Yeah, well, this is a different angle, but for some years I started my joint sessions in mediation, especially in family mediation, by having the ground rule of showing respect to each other in the way that we don't interrupt each other. And then a couple of years ago, I mentioned this to I think it was a Spanish mediator, colleague. And then he said, what does not interrupting have anything to do with respect? I mean, in my country, we show respect by being interested in what the other person says, and that's why we interrupt. That's not about. That's the opposite.
Mirella, hear that, Mirella, hear that.
So then I started not to interpret the interrupting by calling it respect, but I'd say we don't interrupt each other, because it's better if you can hear what the other person say is before you answer or whatever it is. So I'm not calling it respect anymore, because for many people it doesn't have anything to do with respect.
But the way I go about it, I've always have believed that let people be. Whatever, if as between them, they'll work out a method. If it turns out to them taking out pistols on their head, then something is going wrong. Otherwise, let it flow. At the end of the day, like we always say, people themselves have to find out what their solution is going to be and how they will go to that point. And if we in some way try to take it into a path which is different from their cultural maybe upbringing and all, so it won't be a natural process. then they'll be put into a process where they won't be themselves. And if you're not yourselves, I don't think you can really reach a point of where you're comfortable with each other. That's the way I look at it. I don't know. I don't know.
But on the other hand, some parts of the big part of the problems many times is that people communicate in a not so very constructive way. So that could be a change for them, doing something new, and that is not interrupting each other. Instead, taking a breath, listening. If you're listening, taking breath, you get oxygen to your brain. You can think better, and then you can say better things. So I think it's that not interrupting part is something very much creative and constructive many times.
I think
so
it has to flow whatever way. If you as a person sitting there feel that things are not going in the right direction, yes, definitely you'll need to do something about it. But it's just so, I mean, so specific. Like I keep saying that, look, first of all, you have so many billion people. Now, each of them is by themselves unique. And then you have two people getting together who are by themselves unique. And there is a third person sitting there who is unique. And that whole combination is not going to happen again. So it is, so you can't be taught about that combination, because it's going to be once in a lifetime kind of combination. So how it plays out, how it pans out, no one has ever recorded this. No one knows this. So although there is a concept in Hindu, there is a cultural this thing that everyone's life is written down. So there is a place that you go to where when you land up there, it was already predetermined that you will come at this time. They will take out a little, they have this, whatever you call it, say slip. So call it a slip. They take out this from inside and they will read out exactly what is going to happen in your life. So everything on that sense is predetermined according to them. So we don't know whether everything is so unique or not unique. We don't know.
Well, when everything is so unique, all humans are unique, then it's a very good thing to be curious as a mediator or as a person.
So I think we're going to change the name of your whatever your organization that you call it Curious Gert. I think that's what it's
called. Not George, but Gert.
Gert. Yeah, I think you should do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you for helping me with my marketing. Thank you.
It'll be so nice. It'll be so nice. People will be curious to find out who this Curious Gert is.
Curious Gert, exactly.
Interesting, isn't it, Mirella? It sounds good.
Totally.
And we're so different. It'll stand out.
Definitely.
Whom are you calling? We're going to call Curious Gert.
Curious Gert Law Firm.
Look, we're moving you away from the law firm part of it. We just want you to be a mediator. Need people like you in this world as mediators. So that aspect of it, definitely that gives you, I'm sure it gives you revenue and everything. But we want to create enough revenue for you as a mediator that you need to move away from that part. We need
Curious Gert mediation. It would be
just Curious Gert. That's mediation. It. Curious. No one needs to know what Curious Gert. Let them be curious enough to find out who this Curious Gert is. Let them do that.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Remember that.
Maybe I have a last story on the topic of, because I just remembered, of the topic of just talking to strangers plus respect plus assumptions. And that was like a curiosity and also the mediation, and it kind of for me come together in like for one story where we were in Jordan with a friend of mine, and we actually at the falafel place, which was a famous falafel place, we were, because it was so famous, there was a long queue, so we actually did exactly that. We just started chatting to someone who sat next to us, and turned out like to be a guy from Amman, really like we're still in touch, really beautiful person, like really nice and friendly and everything. So we kind of immediately connected and chatted and talked, and somehow then agreed that we would go for a tea afterwards. And so we went to this place, which then was crowded by men. So I was like, am I supposed to be here? Can I come? And I was like, yeah, sure. So basically I went, and it was a shisha place, and so we sat and we had a tea, and it was nice. And then there was a friend of his coming and approaching our table, basically like just walking by and recognizing him and going and saying hi and shaking his hand and shaking my friend, who was a guy's hand as well, and not mine. And I was sitting there because I'm from a different context, and I was especially in that moment, I was of course like a bit taken aback. Okay, that's strange. And so then, and they chit-chatted a bit, and then he went, and he nodded into all directions, and he went. And I remember I said to my friend, okay, maybe now he did not greet me because I'm a woman, you know, and because it's this culture, like, is a difference, sees women differently, and so on. So I was immediately in my head, like, kind of stereotyping a little, but didn't know exactly where to take it from, because I didn't want. And then I think a moment later, the guy called this, like, guy, the friend we met, to him. They chatted, and then he came back, and there he was then also in a way mediating, because he then he said he is supposed he should apologize for his friend, that he now kind of saw me looking a bit like stunned and maybe irritated, and that it was not his intention to be impolite, but he was brought up in a way that he was not supposed to shake women's hands, you know, or like address them directly, or so. Basically, he didn't know, and he didn't want to be impolite, so he did not do it. But he saw my look afterwards, and he might have offended me, and it was not his intention to offend me, and so he wanted to make sure that I get an apology if I was offended. And I was in that moment sitting there, and I found that so interesting, the situation, because yes, it is a different culture, different mentality, and I was part of it, and I felt so comfortable there, especially with the friend we met. But also then the action that followed, you know, I found that this whole situation fascinating. So I felt actually afterwards even more comfortable. But it was interesting how my mind kind of made up different reasons, different thoughts, and so on. And it was then recognized. And then he didn't come back for the reasons that he said before. But then he asked the other friend who was brought up in a different way, maybe, or just had a different.
I think we have to be able to we have sometimes in some cultures, certain sentences, sometimes you use certain words, and those words have a certain connotation, and in some other places totally different. So you can say something nice to someone, and the other person thinks that you are in some way telling them to whatever they're telling them to. Maybe it could be a totally different thing. So I think basically, how do we actually do that? I think we just have to basically always believe that everyone has the best of intentions. I think that's what we have to start with, and then, like, innocent until proven guilty kind of thing. I think that's what the whole point should be.
Yeah, but you are kind of already a little brainwashed in a way from, you know, from kind of stories and so on. And if you're not, that's why I say, like, this trip to me was a complete revelation. It was like really in so many ways, like, changed so much that I have not been personally in contact with, and completely gave me a different picture of something that people just talk about, you know. And that moment, if it wouldn't have been for a friend, you know, and maybe this moment, then I might have gone out of there having a
Totally
perception,
different,
or having felt offended. And then it kind of was like changed. My whole perception was changed, because I started thinking around the corner, thinking in a different way. But it was only because of this process that happened, and I found that so fascinating. So I found it really, really, really beautiful.
I think this whole cross-cultural experience, I think, is really interesting. I mean, there's so many that whole dynamics to it, and Gert definitely has so much of that experience. So Gert, some interesting stories from you on this. So reading lips is not, again, this is not my expertise for sure.
But you should be curious about. Well, there is a story.
That's become a universal sign for Gert because of you. Now Mirella is now spreading it all over. Like, this is Gert's sign. Do that. This is going to be.
Okay.
Not to
the
be
story goes like this.
Yeah.
Are you finished?
Yeah. Okay. Come on. Okay, go ahead.
Might come back, but yes, for now. Yeah.
Some years ago, I went to a mosque in Copenhagen because I was curious about having been to a mosque. So I went in there, and in the lobby, or what do you call it, the entrance, there was a big, there was shelves there, like when you go to a bowling hall, you have all those shoes there. So there were a lot of shoes there. So I understood that that's the thing to do, to put your shoes there, because I've heard that you don't wear shoes in the mosque. So I asked a man. I put my shoes there, and then I asked a man who was coming from inside, is it okay if I go into the mosque, the big room there? And he said, I go ask them inside, the men there. And then he put a pair of shoes in front of me, and then he went away. So I thought, but aren't you supposed to be without shoes, and now it puts these shoes in front of me. So I thought, okay, so I put one foot, left foot into the left shoe. And then I thought, no, this couldn't be right. This couldn't be right. So I took the foot out of the shoe. And then he came out and said, it's okay if you go in there. And then he took the shoes and put them on and went away. So I understood that those were his shoes. And I thought for a moment that those were like bowling shoes, that special shoes,
holy inside.
Holy shoes where you were inside. And then I started to find.
And look at the other way around, Gert. If supposing you had worn his shoes and walked off, he would say, what kind of people do you have? These guys come in, they take other people's shoes and walk off in that. What happens then?
Yeah, but I also thought about what would have happened if I put his shoes on and walked in there, and they found me with the shoes on, and he found me with his shoes on.
both sides, Gert was gone.
So now I know how to behave in the mosque.
Good, not too much of a problem there. At least you learned in an easy way.
Yeah.
Probably it would have been the story of the year and probably good fun in that moment.
Well,
it would be news if if something had happened to him. It would be news there.
And I saw also in front of me, I heard stories about what they do in certain countries where if you are like stealing an apple, they chop your hand off. So I saw myself there
without
any feet, no feet at all.
So then you would have at least not have to bother about the size of the shoes, you know.
What size? What size? 0.
Yeah.
But what is the future of mediation, and what are you doing in that? What is happening in that? What is the way you look at the way it's going to go forward?
Okay, there are many aspects to that, but I could just take one. One of the reasons I'm living in Stockholm or in Copenhagen, except from I love Copenhagen and all that and so on, is that I have a project, a pilot project with a Danish mediation organization, and we are building a concept on co-mediation in cross-border disputes between Swedish and Danish companies in dispute. So we have one mediator from each country. So that is a concept I'm working on at the moment and developing, because I think that's a really good idea for any cross-border or cross-cultural dispute. To be one from each. We talked about man-woman earlier, but it could also be one Swedish guy and a Danish lady, or the vice versa, or two gentlemen or two ladies.
Is language quite different? Is language an issue there?
We don't hear you.
Is language quite different? I mean, Swedish and Danish?
Very much so. To me, it's a benefit that I know I can talk and I can understand Danish.
No, because I'm just thinking that I've been talking about this, that language is something which is important to be able to communicate, for people to communicate in that, because they open out a lot more. So I think for a person sitting there with two people sitting with knowing both the languages would definitely have, in your case, maybe you know both. That's a different thing. But in general, I'm sure that doesn't really happen. I think Mirella also speaks, for her it's good, like she can speak Czech and she can speak German and 50 other languages, which we would need a list of. So I think, doesn't it help? But doesn't it help? It helps, Mirella. The language is
yeah, definitely. But what I also learned, and I think that's also probably in Gert's case, it helps when you live in a country, because there's so much. I mean, if you just learn a language from the book, that's not the same. I mean, you couldn't, because there's so much non-verbal. There is so much like cultural connotation. There's so many words that are more like kind of maybe slang, and so to me, it helps that I actually have been like really close to the culture and the country, because otherwise you just learn a language and you learn it on paper, and yes, I would understand it to some extent and I would be able to speak to some extent, but I think when it comes to really also underlying issues. It's
you won't be able to give that comfort, the comfort that you need from language. They won't. It will come into, okay, you'll be speaking it, but in breaks.
Let me tell you one example, and this is also an example I really like to mention. This was a friend of mine living in the US, you know, and I went to visit, and then we had the situation where I said that somebody who was really close to him, and I met that day, irritated me. And the thing is that for me, that was completely, I mean, my English was quite fine, you know, everything was understood, and he took every word for granted that I said. So when I said, this person irritated me before, and he was really close to that person, so we ended up having a fight, because he was like not understanding, like, what's the problem, what's the issue, like, what did this person do, you know? They were just friendly to me, nothing but friendly to me, you know? And long story short, we figured that there is actually a difference. And in a German language, you have the word irritiert, which is kind of, has a negative connotation automatically, normally. In English, it does not necessarily have to, no, it doesn't, no, the other way around. In German, it does not necessarily have to have the negative connotation. In English, I learned, in the English language, it has this negative connotation. So what I wanted to say was confused. I was confused. So, because then I said like, well, nothing bad, you know, it just irritated me. And he was like, what? So basically, we really figured out that the word I was looking for was confused, which was not a bad thing in it itself, you know. But he didn't even get to the point of questioning the word, because everything else that came out of my mouth before that made complete sense. So, and to me, it never occurred to me that the word could have a negative connotation automatically. So we cleared that up, and that helped. But just saying, if you have somebody who maybe speaks a second language, but not to that extent, it can actually sometimes cause more harm than it can actually help.
So this is where Gert is coming from. The fact that this cross-cultural thing, this co-mediation, I think that's why it becomes very important. Look, I'm sure there are some people who can speak both the languages and they're as fluent in both the languages, but they'll be rare. I don't know whether they're rare or not. Gert will tell us. But for Swedish and Danish, there won't be so many people who speak it absolutely fluently. Like Mirella said, you actually understand the slang, you understand the slightest aspect of it. So there won't be too many like that, are there? Okay, good. Are there too many people like that, or are there not too many people like that who speak both the languages as fluently?
Now, when you compare the Swedish and the Danish languages, if you read it, it's 75% the same words, 25% different. But when it comes to pronunciation, it's 150% different, because the Danish language is, they talk very, very low here, somewhere here. So they're talking, you can't really hear what they say. So when I experienced that some years ago, when I went to a bar or a restaurant or something, I spoke Danish with them on the other side of the bar, and the man, he said, "What?" And then I thought, maybe if I do that, I try this, and I tried it, and I said the same thing, exactly the same thing, but very, very unclear. And then he said, "Oh, yeah." then I understand. So that's a big challenge, I think. So when I watch Danish TV series or something, I always have the Danish subtitles, so I can, if there are some things that I don't hear or understand what they say, I can read it and then I understand it, because there is a pronunciation problem or challenge for me.
No, but Gert, are you taking this now? Right now, it's only Sweden and Denmark, or are you looking at the larger picture, the world as general? Are you doing something there also?
I have been speaking to colleagues throughout the world for many years, like Mirella in Prague, and I mean Swedish, Czech disputes, and I've been to America, I've been to England, I've been to different European countries and talked to colleagues, and everyone is thinking it's a very good idea. But some years ago, I understood I have to focus. I can't spread myself to all of the world. So now is this pilot project here in Sweden, Denmark, and then if it turns out a good, then we can expand it for Norway, Finland, and the rest of the world. But if you are going to success with some things, you have to focus and make a pilot, and then you go from there.
No, because I tell you what, because I'm actually trying the same thing. So from your experience, your learnings there, what are you going to advise me? You're saying focus. So that means, where do I focus? You have India on one end, yes, but then outside that, there is the whole world there. So how would you suggest it? What do you say?
Well, do it well. I mean, if you, it could come from that you have a dispute between cultures or countries. Then you start there, connecting to a colleague from the other country or culture. But I think also when it comes to this pilot project, I call it Denmark, Sweden. There is one thing that I think that we should do, is that we are now planning to join, to meet each other, so we can learn to know each other so a little bit better. And then I think we have to have some, sorry for the word, training on collaboration with a fellow colleague. So we now have a concept of how we're doing it in a constructive way. So that is something that I also think you can just, it could be very hard to mediate with a fellow mediator if you don't know anything of him or her.
No, because the way like I said, the way I'm going about it is that having conversations, and in those conversations, I get to know if I'm comfortable with the person. And if you're comfortable with the person, you take it forward. After that, look, issues don't matter. We learn on issues. Laws we can learn, but the chemistry between the people, I think that is what it comes out only in conversations. Because I mean, these are things which cannot happen. You can't be thrown into it. You have to grow into it, I think.
Yeah, and I think there is one thing that could be quite interesting to know about the other person when it comes to mediation is the spectrum from facilitative or evaluative. So if you have by coincidence sitting with a colleague who is more making evaluations throughout the mediation, and I am more like facilitative, then it could be like I think I have a plan. I'm exploring and I'm being like facilitative, and then all of a sudden my colleague make a judgment on something, but this is like that, and this is like that, and the law says that's a challenge that I think it's not to. I don't want to experience by coincidence.
Exactly, that you'll get to know. I think when you generally are having those conversations, you'll get to know the person that way. I think that part of it is not something you don't need to be thrown into a mediation to be able to understand a person. Do you? Or is it that a different aspect of the person comes out there?
There are some things, for example, that the thing I just mentioned, that I want to know about my colleague before I go into the mediation. So there are no surprises for me. It could be also a very big surprise for the parties.
Because I actually think it's not fair for suddenly two mediators to be thrown in together if they're not comfortable with each other. I think not fair on the parties. I think first of all, the chemistry between the mediators, they should work it out. And if it doesn't work out, they should not go together only because they're getting a project. I think that is not fair on the parties. I mean, you definitely can sit there, but if you're working on cross purposes, I think it's not fair on the parties who from their side don't know this aspect. But for them, look, we keep talking about mediation and everything. For them, that's that one experience, and it might be the only experience in their life. So they don't know.
Sometimes they are expecting, for example, a facilitative mediator, or maybe they're expecting the mediator to be more evaluative, and then then be confused if I and my colleague, we are not speaking the same language, so to speak. So that could be a big confusion when it comes to that aspect of how you are managing your mediations. So, and I want to know, personally, I want to know such things beforehand. So I have to connect to my partner beforehand and talk about things like that.
So basically, long term, you're looking at co-mediation as being your area of work for some time.
Yeah,
That's going to
combined
be.
with my love for traveling. So
Yeah.
that's. But
I
now
think
we don't travel so much. We do these things like Zoom mediations and so. And that's a wonderful thing. But I really hope to go back to face-to-face mediation.
But imagine that, Gert, in a way, look at it this way, that you have a certain expertise. And if you are traveling, so much time of yours is wasted in the travel and everything. But if your expertise during that time can be used by people in other parts of the world, isn't that way Zoom a little better in that sense? Because definitely you can be more productive for people. I mean, in the sense, like I said, there are not too many people whom we can look at as the mediator, the mediator mindset and everything that we talk about. It's not like huge numbers. I don't think there'll be huge numbers which will come out. Okay, millions is not huge numbers when it comes that way. So if there are people like that, shouldn't they be available to people all over the world? Only because you love to travel, it should not mean that they should miss out. So many other people should miss out on your expertise or in some way being helped by you. What do you say? What do you think? How do you balance that out?
I think basically people want to meet face to face, but then we have distances and costs, so on. So I think in the future there will be a mix, but there will be much more online mediations in the future than it was yesterday. So I mean,
I can only talk
2019.
I can only talk from my perspective. I am loving this online world. I play my
I, me
golf
too.
in the morning. I play, come back. I can do my work. I can meet people from all over the world and go back to golf again in the morning. I finding it so perfect. So I don't know. But Mirella will tell you how it's not so perfect. Mirella, why is it not so perfect?
It's not so perfect when, for example, either you or some other person has a really bad internet connection. No, seriously, it's a serious issue because especially when I mean, now the three of us, we're kind of like easygoing, we know each other, we chat, it's kind of like but if you have like really like in a mediation, for example, or I also have like, I'm in projects, I have a kind of then also a team that I'm working with, and then like sometimes really heated discussions. And if you, for example, first of all, you're in a team where then also people would then not use the camera, because I mean, and if you can't force everyone to do it so easily, not everywhere at least, then it becomes harder. It becomes harder, first of all, either if the communication, if the connections is interrupted, like the internet connection in that sense, but then also the human connection is interrupted. You don't see the face, you don't see the gestures, you can't really, like, I feel there are some layers that are just simply missing. So I like it. I like it in many ways because it facilitates a lot. And I think I'm happy that it actually now got to a point where nobody can say it doesn't work like that, because that's an argument I heard a lot in the past, from people. And I kind of also saw how you were struggling to get teams implemented in a company, and then COVID came, and 3 days later, here we went, So nobody can say it's not possible anymore, or that you don't trust your employees in home office, and this kind of control freakism. However, I feel that some layers get lost, and not so much in these kind of conversations like we have it now. But if you really look at conversations where maybe there are heated emotions, or where like one person is interrupting all the time the other, it's just simply harder because you don't really have a presence per se, and that's just my experience. And that's where I think what Gert said before, like the balance, that's my actually major learning, I think, from the past year again, like, or just the major like awareness again, is like everything needs a balance. And I think so that's why it's never like the picture before black and white, it's kind of somewhere, the truth lies somewhere in between for me.
Only the problem that has happened, Gert, is that with Mirella, now I don't know when to interrupt. I want to, but I don't know when to, because I don't know when she's going to get offended of my interruption. But otherwise, Mirella, how are you looking at the future in terms of your work and your role in the world as a mediator? How are you looking at that?
Well, to me, it, as I said before, kind of as it all started, it never really started in the first place as a profession where I want to make loads of money from or something. For me, it always started as a mindset, as a lifestyle, as a wish, an inner need, and maybe part of an idealism to help people get along better, to kind of communicate better, to get rid of misunderstandings that are not necessary, and you can't save the world. That's the thing that I needed to learn eventually. You know, that is, you can't do it big scale necessarily always, but you can do it small scale. And when you said training before, to me, I see it more as a sensibilization. So, and I, for example, I had like mediation / also sensibilization of people. When I get the feedback of like in a mediation or also in a training like / sensibilization, that the person came back to a follow-up training, let's say, and I asked, so okay, so what did you take from the last one, and did it already help you? And I remember this lady, she said, yeah, I actually started looking at things a little different, approaching things different, communicating a bit different, de-escalating. I became this kind of like with more awareness, informal like facilitator, you know, in my own company, in my own department. And since then, I could help people to maybe then get along better and build teams. Like this is also part of what I like to do, is like team building, you know, just help people to communicate better. Then I felt just with that little piece, you already made the world a little better.
Yep.
And this is kind of where I come from. So that's why I don't see mediation necessarily also in my future only as the part where people are already at the edge and already kind of, let's say, divorced or like in front of court. And now you just have to try to get them somehow out of the process without killing each other and without losing everything, and to just then go on with their lives. But as a relationship building and improving measure.
Basically, the culture of mediation is what you really want to spread in a way. That's what you're trying to do. That there is a way that people approach their issues, their relationships, everything around them in a manner where that whole collaborative kind of approach and trying to work together on something, is that what you would like the world to be? Something like that?
Relationships between people better. Yes, I want to help people bridge maybe things that they would stumble over or become more aware, just create a bit more awareness that sometimes maybe also just the other person doesn't mean it in a bad sense, but it's just simply different, or maybe kind of deep block communication patterns that have built up between people. And this is part of what for me is mediation as well, being facilitative, being maybe transformative to some extent even, you know, like and educative. So when I look at and I understand that some, like when it comes to mediation, that there is this kind of gap between, am I now facilitative or evaluative or transformative? Does transformative even exist? You know, for me, this is what helps. And of course, you have to then maybe talk with the parties and see how far and what, and it depends on the context. If it's a commercial dispute maybe, or if it's a workplace dispute, or it's family. So you have to have a gut feeling for it. However, at the end of the day, when it's helpful, and you get the feedback if it's helpful, you know? Yep. So this is why I look at it from this more like kind of also idealist part, where I just, as a person, as a human being, I like to help people understand each other better and build bridges. And that's what I try to do.
But good for a person like Mirella, what she's told us about herself, where do you see her fitting into the world situation, and in terms of being a peacemaker or a mediator, whatever? Where do you see her there?
I can see her there.
As what do you see her doing? I mean, what do you, from your side, what do you see her doing in the next maybe 5 years or whatever time period? I mean, last time period we won't look at, but where do you see her fitting into the world situation?
I hope she starts to co-mediate in cross-border disputes together with me, for example. So that is something that I'm very a big fan of cross-border.
She was just wanting to hear good fan of Mirella, and she went into cross-border. Okay, you're a great fan of you have to say that. Well, she likes to hear nice things. You have to say. Okay, he's a big fan of yours, but also cross-border.
Yeah,
we have been working on that project for some years now, Mirella and I. So that's not a new thing, but it hasn't come to a spot where we actually have made it the cross-border mediation. But I hope there will be, and that's I work as a full-time mediator, and I really hope that this Zoom mediation or online mediation will also make it more possible to do cross-border all over the world. without traveling.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say, that is where I think you should focus on, because first of all, your expertise is available to people all over at any point of time. That's one part of it. The costs come down. So we need to bring down costs also, because I'm sure there have been times that people have been kept away because of the cost. We don't know. I mean, that'll be situation to situation. We don't know that, but let's try and cut that part out, and then you'll find time, and that time can be used for, okay, let's not say that kind of revenue that you need to get from the normal thing. Something maybe you're not looking at the revenue part of it, but just in some way adding value to things around you. I think that thing also you'll get some time for, which also is important. Everything cannot be only the commercial part of it. People like you, both of you, are required out there to be helping people. Your stomachs also have to be full. I keep saying stomach has to be full before you start helping other people, definitely. But I think both of you are not the sort who are just looking at the commercial part. So I think that way this online thing really works well, that you can take out an hour, that hour can be used for something good. I would think that. So Mirella, according to you, where do you see Gert? What kind of thing do you see him doing?
Well, what I see in Gert, for example, is like there are like some qualities that actually I think in the future will be especially also for the mediation very, very important. And one is like, at least the way I know Gert is like always this kind of glass half full person, so never half empty. So it's like really just kind of optimism. You're a techie. I think you're kind of a techie in a way. Like, I mean, you're in many technical parts much better equipped than I would ever be. So it's kind of like really like, that's why, for example, Gert started very early on these topics of online mediation or co-mediation. That's curiosity. So I think that's exactly this kind of whatever train comes along, you know, I at least feel that Gert is this person or has a personality to kind of jump on and make the best out of it. So I think also when mediation develops into this, exactly this part of more online mediation, or like whichever like things kind of help people or help to make it easier and facilitate the facilitation process, I think he'll be there. So he's not this kind of person who probably gets stuck in these kind of old ways and wouldn't move with it. So I see that he's basically really moving with where the mediation itself takes it. And what I also think is, when we talk about the commercial part, I mean, Gert, you're also not in it for like in general, like from the mindset, like, yeah, it's a job that makes me money, but it's like really comes from the heart. You know, it's kind of really just what you said before, this feeling when you see people are like later on at peace or have a great agreement or a settlement and so on. It just gives you a good feeling for yourself. It makes you happy. You get energy from it. You get this kind of, so I think it's exactly that. Like in the future, I think mediation will still be his thing. I really myself hope for the co-mediation part more, because I think also we have a similar mindset in many ways and similar approaches, but we are like also bring different skills to the table again. So I think exactly there that can actually kind of help. But I see Gert in the future of mediation as a,
I think this combination of a lawyer and a non-lawyer aspect also, I think, would help. Sometimes that whole concept of like he was saying, the lawyers sometimes have this a certain way of going about it, and if someone else brings in a totally different perspective, would definitely help. And the main thing is that it takes a good person to even talk about co-mediation, because otherwise this is such an individualistic kind of profession. It's the way it's been developing, that people don't want to involve anyone and all. So just to talk about it and trying it out itself takes a good person. And to find, okay, it might be difficult. I'm not saying there's going to be immediately there'll be enough people who would want to do co-mediation, because everyone, look, it has to be equals sitting there. It's not because now Gert has that, he's at that age and Mirella is younger, so it means, I'm not saying that you're younger. I have no idea about your age. Not talking about women's age, but I'm just saying,
actually younger, you know, so
supposing you were younger or whatever, that aspect, that in terms of co-mediation, I think there you come in as should come in as equals. And not everyone can do that, because if Gert says, look, I have that many years of experience and I know what you could do, you don't need to get into this and all, that aspect is, I think, that balance for co-mediation, I think, to make that balance, that is important. And how many people can actually do it? Gert, how many people have you seen being able to do that in co-mediation, to be sitting there as equals?
I think that's why I'm talking about this training on collaboration between two mediators, because I think it's quite we are so used as mediators, we are so used to run the show ourselves. So it could be, I mean, we are trained and we are experienced in helping other people to collaborate, but there might be an issue with our own collaboration with a colleague. I've heard mediators in the out there in the world, when I'm talking about co-mediation, cross-border disputes, they say that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, but not for me. So why? I want to run the show myself.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Very individualistic concept. Yeah.
So that's a challenge.
And a question to you guys, because for me, I'd say also that it's to some extent, in my perception, maybe I'm mistaken, but in my perception, in my experience, I think there's also a lawyer mindset, and it's exactly what you say. I run the show, and I think there's a certain way of an attitude. I think to maybe some, like, lawyers, maybe more than psychologists.
Don't say that. Don't say that, Mirella. Both of us, you have two lawyers here, and both of us don't have. Both of us don't have that attitude at all. We don't have that attitude at all. So I think that way, it's really, with that generalization of Indians and lawyers, you're going to stop doing it. You're not going to stop both of them.
That's why I'm asking, because sometimes at least in my perception, there's a different kind of a bigger personality sometimes there. And then it might have maybe sometimes a bit more this kind of rivalry thought, but maybe I'm completely mistaken.
Absolutely. I think what you said is, I think a certain kind of general, the way they go about it. You're not wrong in that sense, but we don't need to look at the general. We need to look at the exceptions and develop the exceptions. I think that's what we need to do. So I think we're looking at only the exceptions, and that is how I'm going to look at it. I don't even get into this also aspect of lawyer, not lawyer, trained together or trained to be co-mediators. I don't need all that. There is something about you. It is there or it is not there. I will not be able to put it like ego. Ego is the biggest issue which comes up in co-mediation.
That's what I meant. That was the word I was looking for.
Okay, look, you got it now. So that ego aspect of it, I can take you through 5,000 hours of training. I can't take the ego out of you. So if you are sitting with your ego, it will be a problem, and it will always be a problem. So the thing is to be able to, first of all, like you identify the mediator mindset. That's one part of the job. The other is to be able to identify those who actually have put their ego behind them. And I think those people with that mediator mindset will be able to do that, or they have been able to do that. So that identification will come with it. So they will all be ready for co-mediation. According to me, I mean, that's the way. Look, let's see how it pans out. I mean, this is something that I'm doing, but according to me, the ones that my certification, the ones that I give my certification to, those people will be ready for all that. They will not have these issues at all. So they'll comfortably move into co-mediation. That's why on that group of, International Mediators Collective, if you see the description, I've spoken about co-mediation. I think that is what I'm trying to do. And that is enjoyable. It's not just about running a profession. You enjoy it. I mean, we're talking to each other. We're enjoying that conversation. I mean, just to enjoy the moment. Just the fact that, okay, you can do a certain mediation and you can do it. If you tell the parties, no, I can do it, and they will all say, okay, you can do it. Its options are always there, but why not enjoy the process? I think it'll be more enjoyable. I love that.
So Vikram, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
It's always going to be my show, and you will know nothing about me at the end of the day.
So just put it on LinkedIn.
We all made this mistake at some point. You know, I made it. So I now have to smile when you. Because that's
no, I tell you why I don't talk about myself is because I don't want it to influence anyone when they're talking to me, new people to come in, because they'll think, oh, this guy has that thought. But I don't have any thought. It's always evolving. So if I talk to you and there is something that I take, so if I've said something in another show, they say 2 weeks back, and you say, oh, Vikram thinks like that. No, Vikram doesn't think like anything. He's a total blank screen. Anything comes and he's growing all the time at every moment. So there's nothing there which is stuck there on the wall. So by saying it, like I was talking about books, just the fact that the guy wrote it, he's so stuck in that theory because he said it. Every day you evolve. And just the fact, because you can't change your edition of the book every day, it means that people are reading something that you as an author himself is not convinced about. But they will have to read it for the next 20 years because at one point of time, that was your bestseller. And you can't get out of that. And you can't change your theory and say, oh, I was saying something wrong. This is not the way I look at it. It is not the way to go about it. You can't say it because you sold millions of copies of that book. So I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on that. But the Ronia, the robber's daughter, or whatever that is doing, that stays. Okay, that doesn't need to be amended.
Yeah,
That stays.
I told that to Gert as well. You know, I mean, chatted before that interview that I was going back to my childhood books.
Yeah, and that should stay. That should stay. Those books they don't need to change. They're okay. They're okay. We talk about the other theories that people come out all the time on that aspect. Gert, do you write papers and books or something like that?
I have a book in mind, or maybe 2 books in mind, but that is I don't want to talk about myself. So
why don't you just talk about it instead of writing it? Why don't you just talk about it? It's whatever.
I do it. I talk about it, and that's one of them is about mediation. But I want to make a combination of mediation and neuroscience.
Yep.
Why do we behave the way we do, and how does it work in
Look, I'll tell you what, like, because that's why I say keep talking about it, because we have someone called Lisa as part of the group. She said studies have been done on the human brain where they've tested out the whole mediation process and how it affects the brain. And they're actually studies that obviously exactly what the studies say. You people are the educated, you can read about it, but these things happen. So I think when you talk about it, everyone is, look, finally it all comes down to whatever you think, someone has already thought that. And which is the problem that I face. Whenever I say something that is written in that book, they think I've read it from that book and I'm saying it. Obviously, if I've thought something, someone else has also thought the same thing. I'm not so unique in this world that I'm the only one who's getting that thought. People have got it. So I think in that sense, I think we should, that's why I say talk about it. The whole concept evolves. It evolves better.
But again, what you're saying is, again, interestingly enough, just part of taking things for granted, because that was something that I actually learned, and I learned it very much in the last year when I saw how everybody else was putting everything on LinkedIn and so on. That to me, many of these things are complete common sense. Common sense. And you read it and you think like, but people, they sell it like the new wine, you know, and then they go like the 5 points of this and the 7 points of that. And I refused to do that in the years before, because to me it was so common sense that I thought like I make myself ridiculous if I put that out there. But then eventually I had to learn, and that was also what I learned in some trainings where I actually started to, or like in these courses where I actually taught about conflict management. We had to go way back to the point of the facilitators in communication, and that there is a thing like changing your perspective and trying to look at it from through the other person's eyes. And that was something we stumbled over. And I thought like, gosh, but then I felt it's not that people are not, that they don't know it. It's just they are not aware of it anymore, because they focus on so many other things. So it's somewhere inside them. And when they heard it, it was like really like, yeah, you're right. You're actually right, you know, but I completely in the rush of things. And then also when I ask, why didn't you do it? Well, I never had time. I didn't have time to say it more nicely. I didn't have time to think about these facilitating tools, let's say. And so to me, in the meantime, it's like what I also took as common sense, and somebody already wrote about it. Yeah, but in a way, people obviously need to sometimes hear it again and hear it more, just to be reminded, and creating an awareness that they have maybe forgotten in the rush of everything, you know.
That is what all our WhatsApp messages do to us, all those various ones that come, all those things. These are all common sense things, but it's nice to read them. You know it, you know you have to do it, but it's nice to read it. That's not a problem. But I think the important thing is to be able to keep an open mind, definitely, to be able to take in what people say, not an issue at all. But as long as, from even the mediator mindset aspect of it, I'm just saying that it is there. They just have to know it. And that is where the problem happens. A lot of people say that, like Ken Cloak says, he went for that training and suddenly he said, but it was already him. And that's why I'm going through the entire process. It was already him. All those things had set the foundation. It was just at that point he realized it. So a lot of people are making that mistake between realizing something and becoming something. That training, you did not become a mediator on that day. You just realized it.
But this is exactly the point. I wouldn't have known about the profession of a mediator per se if I wouldn't have taken the psychology studies. You know, if I wouldn't have studied organizational psychology, I wouldn't have stumbled over the mediation. And the reason I actually started studying psychology was not that because I read in my whole life, I read so much about it, I knew so much about it, I lived so much by those things. But then I eventually got to exactly where you getting back to this kind of qualifications and certificates and everything. I was like, if I ever applied for a job, or if I ever told anyone, and then they asked me like, yeah, where's your qualification? Well, actually, every evening before I went to bed, I read like several chapters in a book about it, and I actually lived by it, and I actually experienced it. So yeah, okay, great. And so that's why I thought I studied it mostly so that I have a title, so that I have a badge.
I'm not falling into that trap. I'm not falling into that trap.
On.
Let me tell you, I'm not falling into that trap. Let people
And,
think,
well,
not think this guy, whatever it is, I am not going in that direction. I
what I'm
almost
trying
did.
to say
Let me tell
with
you,
that,
I almost did. I almost went in that path. I actually contacted some place who conducts these things, and I said, I want to do the training. They said, okay, we'll not even say I'll let you know. Suddenly, one day before the training, there's a 5-day training. Sends me a message, tomorrow it's starting. I'm not going to. I can't commit for 5 days on one day before that. So I said I can't do it. Whenever next that email hasn't come to me after that. No message has come from that institution, and it is one of the better institutions in the world. So, and I just said, damn good, yeah, I got saved, and now I'm not going on that path at all. But Gert, but tell me, Gert, from your side, when we talk about the identification of the mediator mindset and all, can you tell me some suggestions on how I should go about it? Because we're talking about identifying them on large numbers. So one is trying to reach schools and tell them, I mean, tell the children that, okay, this is a way of going about settling your fights, and okay, that one part identification. But otherwise, any suggestions on how we can go about it?
This is a very big issue because everywhere I go and talk to colleagues around the world, everyone is complaining about they have too little mediations.
Yep.
I mean, the Americans complain up here, the Englishmen complain down here,
Yeah.
and the Swedes and the Danish are complaining in the basement, so to speak. So, but I think the thing you have to do is there is a paradigm shift. You have the old school courts and arbitration, and you have mediation, and the traditional way of doing it. That's the old paradigm, and we are approaching the new paradigm. So every little step you take, you have a thing like this on the internet. You make people aware of this and new thoughts maybe and so on. And you have a speech somewhere. You make some marketing here, and a lot of those small steps. And all of a sudden, in the very near future, I hope, in Sweden, for example, in Denmark and other countries, we will come to that place where the Americas have been for a long time. English people also in other parts of the world. So we all have to do all those small steps towards that shift. And it doesn't come like that. You have to do all those. So whatever you can do, a very good thing that I think that you said is that you talk about this with small children. Talk about the concept of resolving dispute in different ways, and then you go to. I personally teach mediation at the university in Copenhagen, and the wonderful thing about that, and why I'm doing it, I'm not, by the way, doing it for money, because you don't earn so much money on it, but it's a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to young students at law school, sorry, before they come out into the reality of the old paradigm. They start working at law firms and so on, and they just keep the old wheels going. So that's also a thing to talk to the young law students. So there are a lot of things you can do.
No,
but matters.
Because I've tried this. I've basically started talking to students, and some very interesting thing came out from that. I don't know, Mirella, I told you, give you an example, whatever. There was this small group of kids. I was asking them that in your school, is there a situation where is there someone who helps you solve your fights or resolve your fights, whatever? So this one kid came out with a very nice story of her own. She said there were two kids in her class. They were fighting over a public speaking competition that they had to go to, a debate, I would understand, and they could not decide on a topic. So there were this girl who was talking to me and another friend of hers. Both of them went to these two children and sat with them, discussed it with them, and finally both those kids agreed to a topic which was taken from both their topics, and then they participated in that competition and came second in that competition. So in the whole co-mediation happened. Gert, you'll be happy about that. Co-mediation was happening. They actually resolved the dispute, and it led to, of course, a relationship going forward. And they both of them benefited from that relationship going forward. So in one small little discussion that I had, and it was such a limited number of kids, one such good example came out. Think of the millions of good examples which are there. So what I'm trying to do is trying to find a way that we can record these nice stories of these kids and circulate that. There'll be small clips. It doesn't have to be too long, not like our 3 hour conversations. It could be a minute or 2 minutes. Like I just told you in less than a minute what the situation story was. So if from there, in their words, if they put that story out and it becomes viral the way all these videos go viral, let them put it on TikTok if they want to, whatever else they're communicating on. Let it be out there, and people would actually, I think, relate to it. Those between those kids, I think these are the things which are common. I mean, these are the kind of things they all get into. Because I'm look, the scale is what I'm talking about, Gert. The scale is we have 250 million children in school in India. Now, for those 250 million to create a culture of mediation, we can't do it in any other way but using social media. I don't see that happening. So you have YouTube videos, you have these clips being circulated on WhatsApp. I think that is the way I'm looking at it. It doesn't have to be only Indian experiences from all over the world, small clips. We don't need too many. So I think that way you should also look at in Sweden and in Denmark. If you find some kids, just talk to them. I'm just saying, just have conversations with Mirella also. Just have conversations with kids around you exactly the same way that in your school, is there someone, they will come up with their own example or they talk about someone else. Talk to that kid. So how have you helped them? That little story. If there's a story you think is worth talking about, ask them, ask their parents, can we record this story? Can we circulate it? And I think we can start that process. It'll be one story at a time. I'm not saying it's going to be billions of stories or millions of stories out there, but at least one story. Look, this story that I've told you, you'll hear it so many times from me, various places where I sit. You might get tired of it. These kids sorting this problem, but I don't mind. You can get tired of that story, but that story was too good for me because it was my first attempt at talking to kids, and it was such a small group, and in that also such a good story came out. It made me so optimistic about the direction that I am taking. I think this is, it was perfect. I couldn't have asked for better. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
So Vikram, earlier I asked you what you are going to do in 5 years. Now I know you talked about millions of video clips, and now I know what you're doing in 5 years and 10 years and 50 years, making video clips for school. But seriously, those video clips you are talking about, they are also those small steps towards the shift for a new culture and when it comes to a dispute resolution.
And these are things, look, in things spoken by the children in their own language, the language that they understand. And it'll be very simple. There won't be technical mediation words thrown into it, because that mediation word will not be thrown into it. So it is going to be pure language that everyone understands, which is what we have to bring it down to. Like you were saying, this whole concept of mediation, that word, and like Mirella was saying, it's not something people know it. This happening. So this is, we start with the children. Then same thing we do with communities. We have the same kind of people who've done this in their communities, their examples, people who've benefited from it, their little clip, and let's just start putting it out. You have your YouTube channel, Mirella has her YouTube channel, I have mine. We're all just throwing things out. Just let people talk and listen, because my videos are going to be that long. Someone told me, why don't you put out snippets from it, take out some parts of it. I said, look, the whole thing is important. How do I cut off one part and say this is important? Everything is important, and the whole flow of it is important. Even the revolution of a mediator, according to me, you have to watch it in that series that the person is putting their story out. By me taking one clip out of it, like Ken Cloak said something very, very nice in the first one. But if I take that out of it, it'll be not in the context that he was talking about it. So for me, my channel is more for the people who have that passion. I haven't told Gert about this. Basically, what I'm doing is I need my 1,000 people whom I think have that mediator mindset. And I'm saying those 1,000 identify their 1,000. So we have 1,000,000 people in this world which have been identified. And I don't see it being too difficult, because I see that my whatever number of people that I have on LinkedIn or Facebook and all that, there are large numbers available. Brazil, for surprisingly, Brazil and Colombia and all those places, Brazil, someone told me there are 150 million matters lying in courts there. And in India, we talk about 40 million as being huge. 150 million lying there. So, I mean, these are places, there's so much that can happen. So we just have to, I mean, I don't see 1,000,000 being difficult at all, but I'm sure 1,000, you each can get 1,000. So, I mean, I keep giving the example that multi-level marketing and Ponzi schemes become successful. Why can't us promoting mediation become as successful like this?
Just the only thing that's, again, me personally being a bit critical on some things, what I also learned is that eventually people become numb to things. So I mean, if you only kind of put out like loads of information on something and loads of videos and so on and so on, I think it's a great approach. I think it's a great way to kind of get it out there. Just also, it can happen that now people are so over flooded with everything, and I see it in myself personally already, that I just shut things off, because I get too much of it, and then eventually it becomes rather annoying than actually relevant, and then I get it, and then I have a negative connotation to it. So
no, look at it from this perspective. Mirella, you put out a video of an actual situation happening, say in a community, an actual situation. Now, the whole the world is filled with a lot of those similar situations. So now this video goes out, and say one person watches it in a community, and a similar situation happens in that community. The person says, "Oh, I saw that video. They used this method and they resolved it." So there'll be have to be various types of things. Okay, with a very largely a lot of people involved, but then maybe it can come down to a certain number of basic things which happen, kind of thing that happen. So we just have to have that limited number of videos. I'm not saying you have to have everyone talking about everything. We just say, okay, this seems to be similar to that, so we don't need to put that out. Okay, this is different, so let's put this out. So once that whole number is out there, so they can actually identify, because Gert, if you go to my YouTube channel, so I have playlists there but this is for people who want to go into a little larger understanding of mediation, but these are various categories. So similarly, you can have playlists on each type of particular kind of dispute or fight or whatever you want to call it. You can have that. So this person just goes there and looks for this. Okay, I want this happened with neighbor, this thing. He just searches on YouTube or on Google and he finds a video of that kind of thing. This is a thought. Look, my good difference is you have books in your head. I only talk about it because it helps me refine the process. Both of you will give your idea. So I'm talking about it. I'm also thinking about it. It's not that I sat yesterday and I thought about this. It's come up from here only. So I think, I mean, we're just evolving ourselves and the process. So there's nothing fixed. It's not like Mirella added something to it that, look, you don't overload people with information. That can also be negative. So all those things, I think we keep having these conversations, and let's keep them. Maybe I don't have problem with 3-hour conversations at all. But for you guys, you have to decide whether that works for you. Yeah, it happens. Gert, you don't have to look at the watch. It happens. That's the way it happens. I told you.
Yeah, I will soon have to.
No, it was wonderful talking to both of you.
For probably the whole day and like hours and hours and hours. So we basically would get from the next topic to the next topic to the next topic, but that will be then series 2, episode 7.
Exactly. That's a series. That's the way it's going to be. Season is going to be one season and so many things. But it was very nice. Both of you took out your time, and it was a very good conversation, I think, and lovely talking
inviting us.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you.
Wonderful. Yes, loved it very much.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. And we'll keep having these conversations. We obviously are going to stay in touch. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you'll still get eventually like the whole video, like of all the trip from Sweden, from Stockholm to Copenhagen.
Yeah, that's going to be one. Yeah, that's going to be one video being put out. No, at the
same time. And then Vikram, you have to beat that, because that will be a 5-hour train journey.
No, Gert, what is going to happen is that you take us. No, Gert is going to take us live on that TV, on the train thing, but at the same time, he's going to be talking about his book. So we'll be watching the outside and we'll be going through his book. and we've got the book out also, and we've got beautiful scenery to look at. That you get to. But like
actually television, there actually was something like that for in the night, like the night television part when you kind of forgot to turn it off, you know, and you fell asleep. And I think it happened in hotel rooms. And then there was this kind of series for trains, like where just trains were driving, like, and you saw them from the outside and you were sitting in the train and it was just a train going. And that was actually just a television program which ran through the whole night. So when you forgot to turn the TV off, you woke up in the middle of the night instead of the fire or something, you just saw the train going. Soft music accompanying. It was actually fun. I have to check it out. It's on YouTube.
The only problem that Gert is going to face is what my daughter faced, that talking in the train, whether that works in Sweden or not, I don't know.
I was told off once because I did that in the train in this department, which was the mute department, but I didn't see it. So I was babbling. Eventually, came and kicked me out.
So, Gert, is it a problem talking while you're on the sitting on your seat?
When I go by train, I prefer to sit in the silent coach. So I could like just think and so on instead of listening to all those telephone calls.
No, but I'm thinking this is a very good.
Not having people commenting on your call, by the way, you know. So.
Exactly, I can't stay away from making comments on other people's conversations.
But can you take their comments or not? Are you okay with them giving it to you or not?
Absolutely.
Okay. No, but I'm just thinking, Gert, that if actually you would do this, imagine that those 5 hours, in any case, you were going to be sitting there and maybe not doing too much work, whatever little bit you could have done. But if you can actually put your thoughts out during that time, and there are people who can benefit from it, I don't see any harm in that, because that is time that you can't do too much more. Think about it.
I love traveling by train because you can do a lot of things there.
And the thought process also, when you're in that train and you're looking outside, like it's a chain of thoughts will now run on a platform totally different or at different speeds maybe. So I think that people can benefit from.
Logging.
Absolutely.
I think that, think of it, I think maybe it's a good idea because you're doing it continuously. I mean, doing this 5-hour journey very often.
And after you did it, please send us the link to the video.
Yeah, he's going to do that.
Your personal travel train vlog. Yeah. Curious.
No, seriously.
Especially dedicated to you. Yeah. Okay.
No, I think let's look for more. Okay. Let's look for co-mediation options and let's collaborate on that, and let's try and work things out. And I'll definitely promote mediation. So perfect. Thanks a lot. You guys have to leave. I'm not going to end the meeting. It's very impolite on my end to end the meeting. So you guys can leave as you like.
So thank you very much and bye-bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.